see Kobe Bryant. After I was done, I sat down, I looked down, I'm like, this guy's still working out? That game, he drops 40 on us. And after the game is over, I'm like, I have to ask this guy. Like, I have to understand why he works like that.
Right.
So after the game is over, I'm like, hey, Kobe, like, why were you in the gym for so long? He's like, because I saw you come in. And I wanted you to know that it doesn't matter how hard you work, that I'm willing to work harder than you.
Tapped in, yeah, we in a loop. Had to step outside, now we going back in. Got my troops, let it loose, fuck it choose, who are you? Tapped in, we making moves, got the juice, we never lose, yeah that's facts man. It's the truth, let it loose, fuck it choose, who are you?
I'm with the OG, cause he never out of grace. Living in this law, so I'm never out of place. In the spirit with Sinatra, so you know we locked in. We working what you doing, so it's time to clock in. We got the juice like a boss. Messiah dead up on that cross. I'm undefeated since living in him. My L's lessons I never lost. God pen, so it shows when I spit. Always working on my craft, delivery hella lit. This flow is hella nice and it's over market price. You can be the GOAT, you getting gutted and sacrificed. Cut the check, I ain't talking Nike shoes. We tapped in, Sinatra's and Prophet is making moves.
Tapped in, yeah, we in a loop. Had to step outside, now we going back in. Got my troops, let it loose, fuck it choose, who are you? Tapped in, we making moves,
Okay.
got the juice,
Sinatra.
never lose, yeah that's facts man.
Hey, Prophet, what up?
Let it loose,
Oh, we gon' talk
choose,
now.
who are you?
Look. God's in me, I'm tapped in. Blessed now, my numbers got a comma in the back end. I mean, I just do the work, y'all not. Go crazy for them blue faces like I'm Christian Rock. Yeah, I started in the basement, big tigger. Now I leveled up. My career's doing 6 figures. Let's get it. Now me and Prophet bout to F the summer up. Like that credit card's no good, baby, we cutting up. Yeah. I know my city trigger happy, so I'm moving righteous. Circle smaller than a Twitter addy. They opt in, we locked in. Sports in the flow, everything we do top 10, we tapped in.
We in a loop. Had to step outside, now we going back in. Got my troops, let it loose, fuck it choose, who are you? Tapped in, we making moves, got the juice, we never lose, yeah that's facts man. Let it loose, fuck it choose, who are you?
Yeah, when you tapped into the Most High, when you tapped into yourself, everything you do, you tapped in, you locked in on everything. Yeah, Solemn Prophet, Sinatra's. Yeah, he the only one that ain't on my list, you feel me? It's all love, that's why I had to get him. We killing ghosts together. Go killer.
Your area is being recalculated. Your destination is 1.5 miles away.
Come take a ride with us.
What you know about top down in the Mustang? Going about a buck 50 on the highway. In the fast lane. In the fast lane.
Okay.
What you know about just driving down the interstate? No destination in my way. In the fast lane.
Hey, I'll give him a yes if you ready.
In the fast lane.
Yes. Moving, cruising, trying to stay in my lane. Bye-bye to Mary Jane. Oh wow, how life changed for the better. Had to change gears cause I kept reversing back to my old ways, looking for the cheddar. I'm still chilling in the hood like an engine, but I'm just planting seeds trying to help the youth have a great beginning. Instead of getting drunk and spinning like some chrome rims, they need help, it's to the point they can't phone friends. Without the peer pressure, up in this dark world, we need high beams, don't get hit like a deer or squirrel. Through Christ we all can make it, just let him take the wheel. You feeling sleepy, don't crash, then go through the windshield. We love the fast lane, but sometimes gotta take it slow. You hear them 12s in the back, your trunk about to blow. My tank full, cause my cup is always overflowing. I match the gas in the fast lane, you see me rolling.
Top down in the Mustang. Going about a buck 50 on the highway. In the fast lane.
Riding with the chief.
In the fast lane. What you know about just driving down the interstate? No destination in my way. In the fast lane. In the fast lane.
Sometimes when I be riding, I just pray to the Father. Grateful to be chasing him instead of chasing a dollar. Cause this world is full of sharks as I be facing piranhas. I'm all about shalom, so I drive away from the drama. My eyes on the road, the Ruach gives a clear view. Leaving all the sin in my past in my rear view. Spreading this word to anybody who will seek help. And since I got the Torah, I don't really need a seatbelt. A student of the word, learning as I read. A servant of a higher, he supplies my every need. On a righteous journey, Messiah navigation. I just put the whip in gear, cause I know he my destination. It's liberating to break bread on the road. Everybody sharing scripts, we all part of the fold. Iron sharpening iron, metal grinding, doing 90 on Abba's highway, and in his lane is where you'll find me.
I'm about top down in the Mustang, going about above 50 on the highway in the fast lane.
Come take a ride with us.
In the fast lane. What you know about just driving down the interstate? No destination in my way. In the fast lane.
All praises.
In the fast lane.
You have reached your destination. Your itinerary is being recalculated.
We out here starving, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. It's time we get some direction. I appreciate my Ak G Martell for getting with me on this one. Hood Exodus.
It get cold in these streets, I pray to God for better days. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Tryna get my head right, I suffer from this pain. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same. I'm cool. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same.
So many people in the dark, I'm trying to be a light. Too many people moving left, I'm trying to do what's right. Too many people falling down, I'm trying to reach a height and lift them up. And if they giving up, I'm trying to bring the fight. Cause if you die in your sin, that's permanent. I'm trying to come up off the dome like the firmament. This rap bleeding out, I think it needs a tourniquet. If demons wanna fight me, we can get it like a tournament. I wanna come up on some bread so I can feed the poor. I'm trying to stick to the path like a guided tour. And if you really wanna know who I am fighting for, just look in Revelation. It's for those of us who might endure.
I pray to God for better days. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Tryna get my head right, I suffer from this pain. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same. I'm cool. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same.
Trying to get my bread right, trying to get my head right. Lead them out of darkness, I be shining like a headlight. We gon' prosper, it don't matter how we started. We gon' reconcile with Abba, it don't matter how we parted. Stay away from folly, don't be spiritually poor. I'm like a lion, I be giving off a spiritual roar. But y'all mentality be physically sore. Only after money, chasing checks like the swoop at the Nike store. Grinding in this world, so I'm about to elevate. Trying to bring whoever with me that's willing to navigate. It's time to eat, I'm hungry with a bellyache. I wanna have the means to get us all to a better place.
I pray to God for better days. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Tryna get my head right, I suffer from this pain. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same. I'm cool. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same.
Shout out to my enemies. They wanna take me out just like the Kennedys. Cause I'm standing on these stands as a simile. The homies got my back, we always move like an assembly. Woo. I'm everything that they pretend to be. Man of God, but I'm still hood mentally. Still riding clean, digi-dash in the centerpiece. Trying to get this money, keeping God as a centerpiece. The devil made a mess of this, the exodus. Only through the Lord, so we trying to see an exodus. And many are called, but if you chosen like the rest of us, you realize that God only bringing out the best in us. Bless us up.
I pray to God for better days. I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days. Tryna get my head right, I suffer from this pain. Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same. I'm a hardcore.
It's coming.
I've been in these streets through the pain and rainy days.
Get ready.
Just tryna get my bread right, hope you do the same.
Hood Exodus. Moses led us through the first one, but I'm trying to do one for my people. There's too many lost in this world.
pushing to succeed. Feels helpless and it's on repeat. I know it's tough, those carrying seeds. Your pain is deep. Swept under the rug. Make it close to you. Never was. I understand it. I do. I've been hurt in more ways than people know. More than people know. It's time.
I said, Shabbat Shalom, family. It's your boy, Solomon Prophet. This is Shabbat Talk. Professor Epps will be coming in here joining us shortly. Hope everybody had a blessed week. How everybody doing?
I'm good.
All praises, all praises. All right, so first and foremost, we got to give all praises to the Most High, because without him, we would not be here today to do this video reaction, nor will we have the information that we have to share with everybody. So he gets the first due praise, the first due kudos, the credit. All of it goes to him. All right, so shout outs. Like I said, Professor S will be in here shortly. But Shabbat Shalom to Sister Tess and Sister Cindy. Appreciate y'all for being in here. Shabbat Shalom to Sister Andy.
Shabbat Shalom to you and the family.
Shabbat Shalom to the Y team over there. Everybody over there. I saw Chief Sims over there.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's see. Shabbat Shalom, Sister Jasmine.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Shabbat Shalom to Brother Greg in the building.
Shabbat Shalom, Brother Akeem and Brother Joel and everybody else, sisters and brothers. Shabbat Shalom.
Real quick, if you have missed this live or you missed a recording of the Scriptural Sabbath Summit, right, Restoring the Calendar of Creation, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go and check that out. I know it's a long video. You may have to watch it in parts. I think we went strong for about 5 hours and like 40-some minutes. That included the actual presentations from all the speakers and a Q&A session. And the Q&A session was a little over an hour by itself. So a lot of good information. Definitely come with something to take notes with. We covered a lot of good information, shared a lot of good information, got some really good questions. We were able to answer those questions. And I've got nothing but good feedback since then. People have been reaching out to me to get copies of some of the presentations from some of the speakers. It's been really good. So if you have not checked it out, definitely go and get it checked out. And make sure you definitely share it, because this information needs to get out there. So we'll go ahead and get started with this week's Torah portion. So we got comments all over the place. Hold on, I'm just trying to check this. All right. So this week's Torah portion was Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 1 through 7, verse 1 through chapter 7, verse 17. And then Hebrews chapter 7, verses 1 through 19, and also chapter 8, verse 1 through 6. So a lot of verse 1s here. But Brother Greg, I'm going to get you off the hook this week, because you are always the first one to volunteer.
Thanks. And my computer, since I was like coming home, my notepad is like frozen anyway, so I'm trying to pull that up where I had like.
See, look at that, all praises. The Holy Spirit was telling me like, hey, go first. So you got time, brother. You got time. This week, the main thing I wanted to bring up was in Leviticus. Obviously, I wanted to read from the Targum because Professor S, and I believe this was, I don't even know what episode this was, probably about like back in the 60s. But we were talking about becoming a priest and what was the requirement for becoming a priest. And we were talking about the importance of baptism. It might have been during that time where we were talking about circumcision, but the fact of the matter of becoming a priest, being ordained as a priest, you have to be baptized. Now, the word baptism isn't used in the Old Testament the way it's used in the New Testament, but to be ordained as a priest, you had to complete the ceremony of washing. And so, as I was reading this week's Torah portion in the Targum, this stood out to me, and it says, "And Moshe did as the Most High commanded, and the congregation assembled on the 23rd of the days of the month of Adar at the gate of the tabernacle of ordinance. And Moshe said to the congregation, This is the thing which the Most High had commanded to be done. And Moshe took Aaron and his sons and washed them with water." Right? So it talks about them being washed with water, but it wasn't just a normal bath, because watch the following occurrences, right? It says, "And he set in order upon him the vestment, and girded him with the girdle, and clothed him with the mantle robe, and put upon him the ephod, and bound him with the band of the ephod, and ordained him therewith. And he set the breastplate upon him, and ordered in the breastplate the Uriah and the Tumeah, and he put the mitre upon his head, and set upon the mitre over his forehead the plate of gold and diadem of holiness. And the Most High commanded Moshe, and Moshe took the oil of consecration and anointed the tabernacle and sanctified it. And he sprinkled upon the altar 7 times, and sanctified the altar and all its vessels, and the laver and its foundation to sanctify them. And he poured the oil of consecration upon Aaron's head, and anointed him after he had invested him to sanctify him. And Moshe brought near Aaron and his sons, and clothed them with vestments, and girded them with girdles, and checked them with mitres, as the Most High had commanded Moshe, or Moses. Right? So it wasn't just simply a bath or just simple washing. After he washed them, you see a series of things. He's putting on the priestly garments. He's anointing the altar. He's anointing their heads with oil, right? The consecration oil. You saw this, further on down the road when you get further into the Old Testament, of how the prophets would anoint the kings of Israel. Whenever you have a position of prestige, or authority, or some type of significance, a lot of times oil is used in that. So that's one of the things that stood out to me regarding the establishment of the priesthood. And water, washing them with water, was very significant. So that was my thing. Did anybody get anything out of this week's Torah portion?
I would just say that in Hebrews, where it just says that Messiah Yahushua was he serves in the true tent put up by Yah and not by man, which was just interesting to me, just because the whole talk about the temple being rebuilt and Antichrist going in the temple, and then the temple is not physical but it's spiritual. It's just like a whole debate on that piece, but that part just stood out to me, where it says he serves in a true tent put up by Yah, not by man. The word tent was translated in other book, like it could have been, was it like if the word tent was used in other translations, but that's what it said there in mine. But that stood out to me, like in Hebrews. Hebrews 8.
Hebrews 8.
Yeah, because it said, what is it, 8 through 6? So it was between 1 through 6, one of those verses. That means
I'm looking through right now.
Hebrews. Where's Hebrews?
Oh, verse 2. Okay.
Verse 2? Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
Verse 2. Let's see. You can look into the lexicon and look at the actual translation. You know.
No, yeah, man, it's the sanctuary in the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man. Well, KJV. So, but he actually said,
let's see.
In
the sanctuary and in the true tabernacle, which the Most High pitched not man. So that word tent is the actual tabernacle. I figured it was referring to the tabernacle because essentially the tabernacle is just like a enormous tent. But we can confirm Strong's Concordance 4633, skene, a tent, a booth, a tabernacle, an abode, a dwelling, a mansion, a habitation. It's just talking about a tent, a tabernacle, or Hebrews 11:9, Hebrews 8:5, Hebrews 9:1. I'm looking for Hebrews 8:2. Yep, Hebrews 8:2 right here.
Okay.
So yep, it's referring to the tabernacle. So the KJV I don't know if is that the KJV who said.
It was the Hallelujah scriptures.
Okay, so yeah, the KJV actually says tabernacle.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends. Sometimes the KJV is on point. Sometimes the KJV is a little off. It just depends on the translation and no words there. Let me play the Parsha in 60 seconds video, and then we can come back.
Okay.
Because I always forget.
From Nexus, we know you'll never say.
I love when our site crashes during.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. It is called Shimini, which means eighth. After ordaining the priests, they made sacrifices. Then the presence of the Lord appeared to all the people, and fire consumed the sacrifices. The people were awestruck. Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, decided to improvise and offered unholy fire, and God's fire incinerated them. Their bodies were placed outside the camp. Aaron and his cousins were not to mourn or leave the tent of meeting. God tells Aaron that he and his remaining sons were not to drink wine or other intoxicants when they entered the tent of meeting, keeping it holy, or they would die. The priests and their families ate their portion from the sacrifice. Moses questioned Aaron after discovering Eleazar and Ithamar had already sacrificed and burnt their sin offering. Aaron gave an answer which satisfied Moses. And that is Shimini in 60 seconds.
All right. That is Torah portion. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to share about this Torah portion?
I guess Hebrews 7. I was looking at my notes. It talks about like how Mashiach was, the intercession and can completely save us and draw us. If we draw near to Yah, He will save us like through Him, and that. He offered himself up, so we don't need priests anymore to do animal sacrifices for our behalf and for their sins. Like we don't need that anymore because of what he did. Hebrews 7 pretty much summed that piece up. And then Jeremiah 9, I just like how it said, let not the wise boast in their wisdom, and the might boast in their might, and the rich boast in their riches. So it's like, to me, it just makes sense because people do kind of boast, or they kind of get overly confident, and they kind of start to either get deluded or they get deceived by that, I don't know what you call the spirit of ego confidence, whatever that is. It kind of starts to, they start just like a lot of the prosperity gospel preachers. Maybe they got into it initially for the right reason, but then it's like a lot of that stuff went to their head, so now they're kind of way off, and now they're false teachers. But again, maybe initially they got into it for the right reason. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they were always on the agenda, but it's like you could just see like they got corrupted from that.
Yeah, I believe it's interesting you mentioned that. I believe that some people initially start with good intentions. They have their hearts in the right place. They get in it for the right reasons, but somewhere along the way, they become corrupted. I do believe that it happens subtly with small things here and there, and if you are willing to compromise your integrity, for some small matters, it's easier to start on the larger matters, and it's a gradual increase over time to the point where they can look at themselves in the mirror now and be like, man, this is not the individual that was the person they looked in the mirror with 3-4 years ago. Right. And so by that time, the damage is already done. They're fully invested in what they're doing, and they don't have they don't have any conviction about, leading the people astray, teaching false doctrines, conning the people, taking their money, or whatever the case may be. It just happens like that. It's the same thing with politics. I believe certain individuals get into politics with the right intentions, right? And then over time they realize, like, well, if you want to make an impact in the way that you need to, you need supporters. And a lot of times the supporters aren't willing to open their pocketbooks to give you what you need for your campaign or for whatever project you're trying to accomplish without, some assurances, right? And a lot of times that causes you to compromise your integrity, right? And if you're like, I'm doing it for the greater good, and 1 second, pull them on up here. Shabbat shalom, Professor S.
Shabbat shalom, Brother Joe, Professor S.
In the building. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom.
That's true. Is like you said, they start, but then it's like you could tell how Satan told you should or shall not die by eating the fruit, and it's like, oh, you'll have the wisdom of good and evil. It's like make it sound really good. So like you say, oh, you need supporters, don't worry about it. It's not anything bad. It's just you just I don't know, take this money here or whatever it is, and it's actually going to be for good. You could look how many people you can help. Then they start to, okay, little by little. Then before you know it, it's like woman way over there. So yeah, like you said, it's gradual, very like the boiling. What is it? The analogy: boiling the frog or lobster. Or you start the temperature lukewarm and comfortable, and then you turn up slowly, and they start to boil, and they don't know they're boiling alive. They're being boiled alive.
Yep, great point there.
And then you pretty much covered Leviticus, so I'll just say, I guess in Jeremiah, what I got from that is, it was saying like, you see, Yah's house is called by his name, and then people put abominations in Yah's house, which I thought was like interesting how, that. And then Jeremiah 8 said, death will be preferred by those evil ones in those days who remain in the places Yah has driven them to. So they'll prefer death. And he's driving them to whatever places he's driving them to. And they probably think they're in control, right? They think that they have the upper hand, but he's literally in control, driving them to where they're going, but they think it's part of their destiny or whatever they're doing. And that he does, we're going to get over you, but he already know you're going to go here. So
I already got you.
Gotcha.
It's funny you mentioned death, because that's going to be very significant for next week's Shabbat talk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, gave a little spoiler there, but it's all good. That one is one you guys are not going to want to miss.
Okay.
That one for sure.
That's going to be Tuesday, right? Next week, Tuesday. Next week, Tuesday. I believe the 16th. Just to make sure.
I believe so.
Because it's 2 new moons, so it's like it would be 16th. This month has the 30th day or 2 new moons, however you want to look at that.
Let's see.
Sometimes I'm still trying to make sure I know it, so I don't want to be wrong.
Yep, absolutely. But that's one you're not going to want to miss, because we're going to be digging deep, answering a question that everybody has had at some point in their life. Some point you've asked this question, and we're going to be tackling a lot of that information at the same time. So a lot of good information. Yeah, Professor S, my brother, You got anything you want to share for this week's Torah portion?
I apologize for being late, by the way. Sorry.
I was late too.
Not particularly. So.
Yeah, all good, brother. We understand. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up next week's Torah portion. It's Leviticus chapter... sorry.
Mom.
Wait.
What? Yeah, are you going to school? Yes, she's not going to school. I know.
I think I put up next week's last time. I think I mixed them up. This was this week's Torah portion. Sorry. And then next week's is this Leviticus 9 1 through 11:47. So this week we covered chapter 6 verse 8 through 8:36, Jeremiah 7:21 through 8:3, and then chapter 9 verse 22 and 23, then Hebrews 7:24 through chapter 8 verse 6. Next week, this is next week's Torah portion. My apologies. So take the pictures. Hopefully you already got them. You already wrote it down. If not, I'll get back to it before we close out for the night. But as to not spend too much time, let's go ahead and jump right back into this video. My bad. So here we go. We got part 2 of this anti-Luni solar or lunar Sabbath video from 119 Ministries. Me and Professor S is reacting. I'm blind reacting. I've never seen it before in its entirety. So I'm watching it with fresh eyes like you guys are. Professor S has seen it and done a little bit of work studying what they were talking about and rebutting it. So
it really, honestly, and this is not to not to trash 119 Ministries, because they do a good job on a lot of things, right? But it was not that hard to recognize the holes in their arguments, like last week we could have spent a ton of time pointing out all the holes, and we just continued on because it was they were almost moot points, you know what I mean? And as we continue on, they're going to bring up a bunch more moot points that don't actually hold any weight, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for those of you out there watching, this is a prime example of why you don't just take someone's research or study and just instantly adopt everything without thoroughly vetting it, doing your due diligence, doing your own research, fact checking, praying and asking for discernment before you accept it as your own. Right?
Yep.
Because you could easily be, exposed. Even if, like, at first glance it sounds so good, just give it a good look-see, right?
Yeah, there's always so much more beneath the surface, There's so much more beneath the surface on so many of these issues, especially this one, and we don't want to just look at the surface and say, oh, okay. You don't want to judge a book by its cover. And we don't want to just skim over it and say, oh, well, we figured it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's why the scripture says for us to examine the whole matter. Mm-hmm. The whole matter. You don't want to just get it on a surface level. You want to examine the entire thing. So that being said, let's go ahead and get to it. All right, let's mute our mics and then I'll hit the play button.
Holy convocations which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. On the 14th day of the first month at twilight is Yahweh's Passover, and on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread to Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. Notice also that Yahweh needed to inform us that the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, being the 15th day of the first month, is a day that no customary work is to be done. If indeed the 15th day of each month is already a regular Sabbath, why would he need to inform us that it's a day of rest to begin with? The regular Sabbath is a memorial of the 7 days of creation. The holy days scattered throughout the year are observed on certain days of the year as a memorial to other acts of Yahweh, such as the anniversary of when the children of Israel went out of Egypt, etc. But the Sabbath is given for us to remember the creation of the world and the rest as Yahweh did. We need to do what he did and do all of our work on 6 days, but rest on one specific day, the seventh day, the day that Yahweh made holy and commanded that we remember as one specific day, the seventh day, and we are to keep it holy. How would we count to Pentecost, or in Hebrew, Shavuot? One pretty obvious problem with the lunar Sabbath doctrine is how it contradicts how the Feast of Weeks is commanded to be observed.
It's an obvious problem. It's an obvious problem because it's not clearly instructed, you know.
Absolutely. Didn't I pull it up and we did the calculations last week, or did I only do like Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover?
I think you might have done it last week, but here's the thing. Troy broke it down very well on.
It's like a study in itself.
Troy broke it down very well on the summit. So you know, it's so obvious when you actually look at what is being said in the scripture. It becomes obvious that the count to Pentecost is what it is, not what we, want it to be, as they're gonna try to show here.
And just real quick too, just from my perspective, because that was the one I had initially when I was asking about that. I was like, wait, but then like you said, that once I saw some of the information out there, then I actually did the calculation myself, and obviously you see, because pretty much when you look at Shavuot, it's for two things, like Pentecost, but then also when Moses came down Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
And just looking at that, and again, many scholars agree that that's what that represents. Even that was the purpose of remembering. He came down with the 10 Commandments. If you look at that entire time frame from, I think Exodus is where it states, it's up, hey, on the 16th day we arrived here, the same as this. That whole time frame to him coming down from with the 10 Commandments, it's 7 Sabbaths. It says count 7 Sabbaths and then number 50 days. That's the part where a lot of people get mixed up, that count and then 50 days. If you look at the original Hebrew, there's a recount. Okay, count 7 Sabbaths and then recount. How would you come to the next day as 50 if you're recounting 50 from that? And then again, with Moses, that entire time equal exactly 7 Shabbats from, again, Abib. And then 50 days after that is when he came down with the 10 Commandments. And plus, it's the summer harvest, it's the wheat harvest. I mean, there's so many things that point to that being the summer harvest. It's like there's so many, even in the New Testament, when Yahushua was saying, it's not 4 months until the wheat harvest. And he said that around Abib in the prior scripture or chapter. But I mean, there's just so many.
Oh, yeah, it becomes clear because, just to give it a short breakdown here, not to dwell on it too long, but you've got the 7 Sabbaths is when they arrived at Mount Sinai, right? And then they waited 10 days, and then Moses went up to the mountain for 40 days and came back down. So there's your 50 days right there. All scholars agree, virtually all scholars agree, that Pentecost or Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, is a memorial of the giving of the 10 Commandments, right? So, being that is the case, if you look at it, 7 Sabbaths complete does not memorialize it, because there's still another 50 days before they receive the 10 Commandments. So.
And just real quick, I just want to read Leviticus 23, 15, and 16. And ye shall count unto from you, and this is KJV, from you the morrow after the Sabbath, from that day ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Shabbats shall be complete. Even until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, ye shall number 50 days. And I'll just leave it at that. So then if you look at what the Hebrew number for ye shall number, it's to recount. Like just that alone, again, there's a character that wasn't translated as like from this, but ye shall number means to recount. Even if you just look at that scripture without trying to find the missing Hebrew character or whatever you call it in Hebrew, it says to recount. So name 7, then recount 50 days. Like it's so clear right there.
Oh, it's very clear. It's very clear. But what he's going to say here coming up is, it's obvious you count 7 Sabbaths, 49 days plus 1 is 50. You know,
That's the biggest argument they have.
We'll let them go ahead and shoot a shot, and then what we'll do is we'll pause it after, quickly go to Leviticus, pull those scriptures up, look into the translation, and then pull up the calendar to see what the correct count is, and keep it moving with the video.
First, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, this would consist of 49 days. Then it says that we would arrive at 50 days if we count to the day after the seventh Sabbath. Leviticus 23. And you shall count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Verse 16. Count 50 days to the day after the seventh Sabbath. Then you shall offer a new grain offering to Yahweh. Let's now look and see if this fits as a possibility for a lunar Sabbath keeper. The small numbers will indicate the counting of 50 days from the day after the Sabbath during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. As you can see in this calendar, the Feast of Weeks does not fit at all into the lunar Sabbath model. In Scripture, Yahweh says that when we count 50 days, we will count to the day after the seventh Sabbath. In this lunar Sabbath calendar, it is impossible for the 50th day to be the day after the seventh Sabbath. In fact, Pentecost or Shavuot can never be the day after the seventh Sabbath if we keep lunar Sabbaths. Thus, lunar Sabbath keeping again contradicts the Scriptures.
Oh, it's such a contradiction.
It also says, the date after the 7/7, the morrow after that you count. So it's like not even that. It's like that day 50, and then the next day would be like you count 50. But you pull it up.
It's actually contradicting the Scriptures to do it any other way. I mean, really. Now, to be fair, it is the count to Pentecost is one of the most debated, even amongst Orthodox Jews, right? It's one of the most debated things, even amongst Orthodox Jews, right? How to do it properly, but it doesn't even make sense, because if it's a memorial of receiving the 10 Commandments, there's no way that it fits if you only have 7 Sabbaths complete and then keep it on the next day. You know what I mean? No way.
Right.
Also, the wheat harvest takes about 110, 120 days to.
Yeah. How are you going to have wheat to offer if you're not waiting until summer?
They got that special strand, that winter wheat. You know what I'm saying? Come with snowflakes on the tip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the word for count, or in some versions it says you shall number. Right? Strong's Concordance 5608, Safar. And so it says definition: to count, to recount, or to relate. And then we come down. The original word is Sefer. So the word origin comes from Sefer. And before we go any deeper, let's quickly look at Sefer. It says a missive, document, writing, or book. Okay, so the origin word is talking about actually keeping record of. Right, so that's where the origin comes from, Sefer, to keep a record, like a book or whatever. So, but Safar, that comes from Sefer, we see assigned, count 7 times, counted, counts, declared, elapsed, measuring, numbered, numbered, proclaim, count, recounted, related, all of these different kinds. Told shows up 15 times, and tell shows up 23 times. Let's scroll down. Let's say recount and relate goes into these scriptures. Let's see here. Leviticus 5 and 8.
When I was, just kind of researching this, I came across, I don't know if you guys know who Fenton is. He was somebody translating the Bible into English, and his goal was to try and get like the best, the best translation into English back. I forget what year, but if you look up the Fenton's translation too for Leviticus 15, like the way he has it worded, you just look at how how he translated that, and I think he knew Hebrew in some of the ancient languages. If you look at the Fenton's Leviticus like 15 or whatever verse that is translation to, you'll see how he worded that too.
Okay, the Fenton's count. Okay, so I'm looking at count exactly, recount. Trying to see if Leviticus 23 was it 23:16.
Yep, I think so.
Appears anywhere else. I saw it down there, but I wanted to see if it. So this one is to count things, to learn their number with accusative, Genesis 15:5. Learn their number. Leviticus 23:15. So to count things right here. And you said, what was the name of it? The Fenton's Bible?
Yeah, Fenton. Yeah, Fenton's translation, Bible translation, Leviticus 23.
Fent.
Yeah, Fenton. 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 And I'm gonna pop this image while you're looking at that, this image in our group chat, just to see if, because this is also one of the pieces where when you look at it again, now obviously I don't fully know Hebrew or anything, but it's interesting that the character they said was not translated right, which would be like from, that would, from that character, when you look at the Hebrew, but side by side, that one character like was not translated in the KJV or some other.
All right, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
All right. So verse. Okay. 15 and 16. You shall also count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath that you bring away sheep 7 Sabbaths, they must be complete. After the 7th Sabbath, you shall count 50 days when you shall present a new offering to the ever living.
And that, at least, that piece is clear. Like after you shall count 50 days after the 7th Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then after it's pretty clear there. You know what I mean? They would be using 2 different units of measurement if they were saying Sabbaths and days, right? But Elohim is going to use the same units of measurement in both of those situations. So if he's talking about days here and he's talking about Sabbaths complete here, it's different. It doesn't come together. You know what I'm saying? So you got 7 Sabbaths complete. After that, then you count 50 days, which is why it says to recount, right? So you begin your count at that point, right? After 7 Sabbaths complete.
Right. So here's a Hebrew on the left, and then the English for Leviticus on the right, and it's color coded so you can see what words. So the highlighted yellow references the morrow, even unto represents the blue. But then this version has a green space in there, and it's missing, right? In the English for Leviticus 23:16, right?
And how are we going to offer a new meal offering? Or it says meat here in this translation, but how are we going to offer a new meal offering if we don't have anything new to harvest and offer? You know what I'm saying? Wheat is a summer crop, right? So it's got to be harvested when it's ready. You don't harvest it before it's ready,
Yeah.
It just becomes abundantly clear. There's passages even in Psalms that talk about in the summer when the wheat's ready. You know what I'm saying? And if you're supposed to offer the wheat in on Feast of Weeks, then you would need it to be ready to harvest.
It even goes back to when Moses did the miracle when he raised his staff in the air and the hail came down. and it said that all the green barley and the stuff that was on the surface got destroyed, but the wheat harvest did not, because it was still in the ground. That was in the month of Abib, which again, beginning of the year, and it takes about 4 months, 120 days to ripen. So it was still in the ground beginning, and so May it would not be ripened. It would not be up in 2 months from March, or from like the first of the year. But looking at it from a Gregorian calendar, how would it be up in March? And that's when it's typically celebrated, when it was in the ground in March, and it takes about 110, 120 days to sprout.
Yeah, they got frosted flakes on the tips of the meat. But Brother Greg, you want to talk through this picture right here?
Yeah, this one is just showing like that character that was missing, that did not get translated. It's just showing that it's like the word, it could be like the word from, or as far as, it's just showing like what that word means. So it's like from. So it's like after 7 Sabbaths, you count, once you hit 7 Sabbaths, then like from that, you count 50 days, similar to how Fenton translated it. It's so just showing that that was an accurate translation. How he translated it, because the word from was left out. And then you see on the right side, like from, since after of time. So once 7 Sabbaths are heard, then after that, you count 50 days. So it's clear that it's saying you count 50 days after the 7th Sabbath, and not you count 7 Sabbaths, which is 49 days on their calendar, and then 50 day, but they're not factoring in new moon day. Because when you factor in new moon, that's not a Sabbath. You skip that and you count 7 Sabbaths, including new moon. It equals perfectly in like a July date. And when you look at when Moses crossed, it literally, this is the same exact date. They come like perfectly aligned to the same date. But that's what this is showing. Like that word from makes a big difference, because it shows it's 50 days after the 7th Sabbath. You count 50 days.
Gotcha. Now you got me curious, because we haven't gotten there yet. But I want to see what it says in the Targum. I want to see if the Targum got up.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually
interested in translation. So let's see. It's 13. Oh shoot! I gotta go further up, further down. Sorry, I got Roman numerals on this thing. I'm trying to find the right chapter. Here we go. 25. I'll be almost there. 24, 23. Okay. Okay. What's the last verse in Leviticus 23?
Leviticus 23, the last verse in like the whole chapter.
What number is that? Yeah, the last verse in the whole chapter.
The last verse is and Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast.
I just need to know the number. Like how many verses is in that?
Oh, for 44. Sorry, 23 goes to 44.
44. I'm just trying to. There's no number.
Oh yeah.
Verses. So I'm just trying to. Okay. So let's see. Three. Okay, so that's that part. Okay. Seven. Okay, here we go. All right. It says, "And number to you after the first feast day of Pascha, from the day when you brought the sheaf for the elevation, 7 weeks, complete they shall be, until the day after the 7th week. You shall number 50 days, and shall offer a mincha of the new bread unto the name of the Most High." Right? So it says it right there. So it says, from the day when you brought the sheaf for the elevation, 7 weeks, complete they shall be. So complete they shall be. You count the 7 weeks and they're complete. And shall offer, complete they shall be. Until the day after the 7th week, you shall number 50 days. So yeah, even the
And it's
target
the day
is
after, because even with their even if we use their calculations with 7 times 7 49, and the next day is 50, it says the day after the 7th Shabbat you number 50 days. So let's just say again it's that Saturday, right? Let's just use their calculation. So after that 7th Saturday, they're counting like Sunday as the 50th day, but it says pretty much once you hit 7 Sunday, from Sunday now you count 50 days. So then that throws it off. That will be wait.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, why doesn't he just say, if it was just 50 days, why wouldn't he just say count 50 days, right?
Yeah.
Why would he say count 7 Sabbaths complete, then count 50 days?
I know we're spending a lot of time. That's why I said this could be a study in itself. But just one other thing, when I was actually looking at this, and I was sitting down, talking to the Most High and asking him to let the Ruach show me this. I was literally up like 4 hours. I'm an early bird. I go to bed like at 8, 9 p.m. I was up like midnight. And when he told me to look on my wall, he said, "What do you notice is different?" Because I had the feast printed out on my wall, like in the first month of the 14th day and the 7th month, on the 15th day. But he said, "Which one is the one that stands out the most to you?" And I was like, "It's Shavuot." He said, "There's a reason why I made it kind of in this way, is because that will show you the true, like, as they try to change times and days. Satan changed times and days. I have it worded like this, so then you'll be able to see the true date, because it's not just like in the 7th month on the 14th day. You count 7, the number 50 is the reason why he did that, so that as we're researching and truly studying, we will be able to pick that out from the false one. We could see the truth from the false." But he was, kind of feel like downloading some of this stuff and tell me when I was doing a deep research on this specific feast.
Yep. It's actually so much more profound when you understand why he says it the way he says it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It becomes so much more profound, and the significance of it is even more clear. If it was just 50 days, well, for one, it would just say that, right?
Yeah.
But it goes back. It goes back to where, it's the glory of Elohim, the esteem of Elohim to conceal a thing, and the honor of kings to search it out, right?
Exactly.
And when you search that out and you come to this, you have an epiphany, a new cognition, right? That a new understanding that you wouldn't have had before, right? And it makes you appreciate it so much more, and also to understand it, because it's more internalized when you study this thing out, and instead of just taking it on for face value and saying, "Oh, look 50 days," because it says 7 Sabbaths complete and next day is 50 days.
Yeah, and literally exactly what you're saying. Because that night, because I was up, I'm like, okay. Then I'm like second guessing. Wait, is this really the calendar? Am I being confused? It's like all that. Then when I saw that, because before all that, I said, "Can you please show me and just give me peace tonight." So I don't want this to drag out another day, like tonight. And again, it took me to like midnight. But once I saw that, I had such a peace come over me, and I was relieved. Like, yes, this is the true calendar. Because again, when you look at how it parallels to when Moses came down with the 10 Commandments, all that time and that could be another study, because I know spending too much time on this for this. But when you look at that entire time for them ending up in where Mount Sinai was to they said it was 10th day. He came down the 3rd day, talked to him, then Moses went up, and then equal like 40 days, 40 nights. But the entire time equals they both land on the exact same date, and that's shows you that you do not include new moon as a part of your calculation when you're looking at the Shabbat. So they both land perfectly on the same day, and it would be good to see both of those dates. So then okay, this is to remember the 10 Commandments in that time frame, and that's why y'all said it that way, because it's that exact, and they both line up perfectly. So like, how can that? It just doesn't make sense to me when people see that. How do you still have
as he tried to say last week, as we were watching it last week, that he tried to say, "Oh, well, there's non-days. The new moons are considered non-days." No, they're not. They're just not counted toward the week. So when you have 7 Sabbaths complete, those are not counted in that, because it's talking about Sabbaths, not every day, right? It's talking about Sabbaths, not every day. You know, he tried to make the argument, as we watched last week, that we have non-days, and we do not have non-days. Every day is a day, right?
Yeah, one of the
and this actually perfectly demonstrates that, because we do count new moon days after the 7 Sabbaths are complete. New moon days are counted in the count to 50.
Yeah, right? And one of the big, I think he also, wait, did he say that already? I don't want to be ahead of myself. We talked about the manna coming down. Did he talk about that already?
Yeah.
So I was looking at that too, and great, and I was actually looking at the Philo of Alexandria, right? Because he pretty much took a lot of detailed documentation of like the feast days. And the interesting thing he said, because they say, well, how was it? Like you said, the 2 non-days or the 2 new moon days. How did they get manna that day? He ran out. He said twice as much on the 6th day, and you're right. Again, when you look at the calendar, that lines up perfectly. But then, people that I talk to, that's one of their questions, and it's like when I'm reading Philo's his writings. It's interesting. He said that on new moon days, they did not eat meat or drink. They fasted those days. That's what Philo said. So for me, that perfectly explains those days. Because again, they fasted on new moon days, so they didn't get manna. Then just restarted back on day 1. They got, each day. In that 6th day, they got twice as much until the end of the month, and they fasted on new moon days. At least, that's just my, how I'm putting it together, because it just perfectly lines up to why I had to say, well, how do they get manna on those days? When people ask that, and he's saying literally in his writing that they fasted, they didn't have meat or drink on new moon days, and there was you blew the trumpet.
And that actually makes total sense, because if you look biologically at what happens when you fast, it resets every cell in your body when you fast, right? Yeah. And so it would stand to reason, hey, fasting once a month is very healthy and beneficial for the body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so just everything just keeps pointing to this. Kind of like I see if something was like way off, like okay, well, but everything.
Yeah. If something's way off, then,
to this calendar being the truly calendar. So
yeah. There's nothing way off. It's only off by our limited understanding if we choose to impose something alien to the calendar onto it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what makes it appear to be off when it's actually not off. It's in perfect alignment.
Right. Sorry, I was having some difficulties. My camera and my audio went out, so I had to close it down, shut everything down, load it back up.
We were able to be some filler ins.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brothers.
That's what I was saying. This could be like a study in itself, like just looking at just Shabbat by itself, because that would take it probably an hour to just looking at all the scriptures that line up to the date being where the calendar shows it at.
It could be. It definitely could be. So I want to show real quick where it's talking about okay, so verse 15, because you can use the calendar, like you've seen so many other proofs of the calendar being correct according to the scriptures. Well, if it's correct according to the scriptures, you can use the calendar as a witness itself to verify whether Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, Pentecost is counted with the 7 weeks, 7 Sabbaths, and then the next day makes day 50, or count 7 Sabbaths and then begin to count the 50 days. Whichever one lines up, you'll see, right? So last week, I remember going up to Feast of Unleavened Bread and showing how that works, right? But this week, we're going to show all the way to Feast of Weeks real quick. So verse 15 says, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall you number 50 days. Even in the KJV, even though it uses different wording, even unto the morrow after
like
the
saying,
7th Sabbath.
Add 50 days unto that day.
Add 50 days, exactly. Not add 1 day to get to 50 days.
Exactly.
Right? But if you guys had any type of questions or doubts, Brother Greg pulled up the Fentence. He pulled up the translation, the word that was missing in the English version, and showed that it's after the 7 Sabbaths are complete. That's when you count 50. You begin your count after that, not complete your count, right? Then it says, so you should count 50 days. You shall offer a new meat offering. So let's go to the calendar. So you got Passover right here, Feast of Unleavened Bread right there, right? Oh, excuse me. And then from Feast of Unleavened Bread,
Wave sheaf.
That should be first fruits. Yep. And then
first fruits, right? And so this Sabbath right here, the 22nd day, is the first Sabbath. So you count Sabbaths. We're not worried about new moon days. It says to count 7 Sabbaths to be complete. So any type of controversy of, well, what about new moon days? You skip them. You don't worry.
Yeah, they're not counted. They're not counted with Sabbaths because Sabbaths and new moon days are a different category of day.
Absolutely. So the 22nd would be Sabbath 1. The 29th would be Sabbath 2. Let's go to the next month. Skip new moon day. The 8th of the next month will be Sabbath 3. The 15th is Sabbath 4. The 22nd is Sabbath 5. The 29th is Sabbath 6. Going over there, skip new moon day. The first Sabbath of the third lunation or the third month should be the 7th Sabbath. The following day, which is the 9th, is when you begin your 50-day count. Now, all the days are counted here, including new moon days, because it's about the day, not about, the specific category. It said 7 Sabbaths, which is a specific category, should be complete. Then you count 50 days.
And then the day after this, so like the 8th, so like the day after is the 9th, and then it's like the day after. From there, you count 50. So I think 10 is the first day. Is not getting that right, or is it 9? I think it's the day after this, or is that the? Oh, I guess it is still line up either way. Like you'll be able to see it.
Yeah,
I just can't remember if it was the day after or like the 10th or 9th, but one of them was day 1. But we'll be able to get it.
Right. So the way I do it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, 12, 18. Right? 19, 20, 21, 22. That's the easy way instead of going all the way through. Right? 20, 22. Let's go to the next month. New moon is 23. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. 50
Right
days is Feast of Weeks or Shavuot or Pentecost, whatever you call it, whatever you want to do. And it is a no work day right there. So it's exactly in alignment with what the scriptures tell us to do. Now let's, just like they did it on the video, let's do the same thing, right? So you got Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is the day where the wave sheath is waved, right? And then, 7 Sabbaths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the next day should be that because 7 times
Well,
7 supposedly.
they were counting new moon days too on their thing, saying, "Oh, well, it's got to be 50 days." Because they're mixing days and Sabbaths complete together,
So I don't see the 9th. I don't see any. I think that's just a regular work day. Nothing special there. So even if they were counting new, let's go here. All right. So this is that. So the first day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Still a work day, nothing special about it. It doesn't even land on a Shabbat.
And what you've got there, is you're only in the third month, so it couldn't possibly be the wheat harvest, and you would have nothing to offer.
Yeah, that's May, and that's when they celebrated. Which again, the wheat harvest is still in the ground.
So because see, we have to understand that the feast days are they coincide with harvests, right? And we can see this when Messiah says, the fields are white and ready to harvest, right?
Yep.
Because the feast days all coincide with harvests, because you have to bring an offering. You wouldn't have a feast day that's in between two harvests because you have nothing that you've harvested to offer. You know what I mean?
Correct. So January is the beginning of the pagan New Year, right? But even those people who keep Sabbath on Saturday and follow the 7 times 7, which is 49 plus 1, they understand that somewhere between March and April is the new year, right? So they understand that that's the new year. But is May considered spring, or is it considered summer? Right? If wheat, like you guys said, if wheat is a summer crop,
it would have to be harvested in the summer, not in the spring.
Correct. I know May is typically associated with nice hot weather, but that's
it's still not ready. You know, it's got to have time to mature. It's got to have time to come to its full maturity and fruition so that it can be harvested.
So let's see. Beginning of the year was March 10th this year, right? So roughly 3 months gets you to May. So we're still in spring here. And then you're talking about summer. And Feast of Weeks is July of 2024.
Yeah.
That's in the summer, fellas. That's in the summer. Even using the Gregorian, that's in the summer.
And again, when you look at
would be ready to harvest.
And when you look at, again, even if you take the days like from Noah going from Mount Sinai, arriving at Mount Sinai, then getting the 10 Commandments, that whole time frame, it lands on the exact same day. Like this year, or that's July 4th this year, it literally lands on July 4th. Like if you look at that time frame, and that's what that represents. So it's like that represents Moses coming down from, and then so he was still up at Mount Sinai on the May. So why would you celebrate it before he came down with the 10 Commandments? Like he's still up there, but you celebrate it before he even came down. Yep. It's like, wouldn't that make sense to come, like somebody is getting, I don't know, promoted? It's like you celebrate, okay, I got promoted. So it's like once they're fully promoted, like, I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but.
That's like keeping Passover in the 9th month on the 14th day at even. It hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah. So,
right? Way before it happened. So
we probably don't have time on this call. But I recommend people listening look at the correlation. Remember that date, and then go count when Moses did the whole Sinai thing, and that whole time frame. That's 7 Shabbats, and then like it was 10 days and 50, and it lands on the exact same date of July 4th, which is Shavuot.
Absolutely.
It's so abundantly clear. This argument is just, it's not even a good argument. They think it is because of the way that they do it, so they're trying to impose the way they do it on us and say that because we don't do it the way they do, we're wrong.
Right, we have to be wrong.
Yeah, we have to be wrong because we're not doing what they do.
And again, inner courts will be open on new moon and Sabbath days and closed the 6 working days. How can it be closed and open on that? Just that one. That one, just shut it down right there. Just one, because how can it be open and closed on this? It shows that new moons jump around on the Gregorian calendar, but it can land on a work day, just like this. Tomorrow is new moon day and Tuesday, but that's a Tuesday and it's new moon day. How can the inner courts be open and closed on the same time? Like that right there should show people to at least start to think more and pray about it. And just this calendar is false that a lot of people celebrate Shabbat on.
Absolutely. And this is not even a dig on people who keep it this way, right? This is not even a dig on them. It's just, hey, look, there's more to it. Don't just take everything at face value.
Exactly.
Look into it further.
It just shows you tradition that's passed down.
Yeah, Mark Twain said it's easier to fool someone than to convince them that they have been fooled, right? Once someone has believed something, they don't want to give it up because they identify it as part of themselves, right? Because it's something they believe, right? And here's the thing is we have to remain teachable. We need to be humble enough to say, hey, I don't know everything. Let me examine this. You know what I'm saying? Let me put everything I thought I knew on the shelf for a moment just for a moment. You can come back to it if what you're examining doesn't line up, right? But you want to be able to put everything you think you know on the shelf for just a moment and then say, hey, now with a fresh pair of eyes, what is this saying? It's the difference between eisegesis and exegesis, But I guess we've digressed enough.
Right? Let's go ahead and get this banged out.
Yeah.
Sabbath. In this lunar Sabbath calendar, it's impossible for the 50th day to be the day after the 7th Sabbath. In fact, Pentecost or Shavuot can never be the day after the 7th Sabbath if we keep lunar Sabbaths. Thus, lunar Sabbath keeping again contradicts the scriptures. What if we examine historical data? Historical information can be helpful if we are trying to discern the truth of something that doesn't seem very clear to us from scripture. Although we believe the scriptures speak clearly about the seventh-day Shabbat always occurring every seventh day, referencing historical works may be helpful for some who are not yet convinced. Lunar Sabbath keepers love to quote from a few encyclopedic references which say that the week was originally tied to the lunar calendar. But if we rely on such encyclopedias to tell us about historical data, we might indeed wonder if the moon had something to do with the setting of the weeks. But the truth is, most of those references are very old and are relying on theories that have their basis in the idea that the Bible is not authored and inspired by Yahweh. Rather,
it's funny. I'm sorry, I had to laugh.
Such articles are usually written by people who have the same historical data we do, but they generally don't even believe in the scriptures and view Yahweh to be just one of those tribal war gods. Because they don't believe in the scriptures, they make statements that the Sabbath was originally tied to the moon. This is due to the assumption that the children of Israel picked up the Sabbath keeping from being in Babylon or some other pagan culture that may have used the moon in setting monthly observances. But when researching this topic historically, we don't need to go any further in history than the time period that Yeshua the Messiah was born into. We do know that he kept the Sabbath day, and we do know that he kept it on the same day of the rest of the Jews in his day. For example, Luke 4. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. The first century disciples also did the same. Acts 17. Then Paul, as his custom was, went into them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the scriptures. So really, the question is whether or not there are any first century eyewitnesses that may enlighten us as to whether the Jews at that time kept the Sabbath by the moon or by recurring seventh-day week.
Yeah, the encyclopedia just did, but you tried to ignore that.
Can we find a clear answer to this?
Oh, not only that, but you've got Philo saying that the second day or the second Sabbath of the month always coincides with a full moon.
Brother, the Bible Dictionary, the Jewish Encyclopedia, Philo, Josephus. What other historical and archaeological evidence do you need? Like,
I mean, we could go on and on and on.
We could go on and on.
We've already got, we've already got 4 witnesses right there. Without,
here you go. I got one for you. So, if you're following Saturday Sabbath, then you're using the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar originated from the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar originated from the Roman calendar, which was a series of calendars which originally started as lunar calendars.
Yeah.
It converted to the solar calendar during the Julian age.
Yeah, when they started worshiping the sun god.
Any more witnesses necessary?
Well, so I don't think he's saying necessarily about. He's saying like scriptural. Like, does it say in the scriptures that it uses the moon? What he was talking about as far as the encyclopedia is basically circular reasoning. He's saying that they don't have, that the encyclopedia doesn't specifically have references. They're just using judgment, but it doesn't have scriptural references. And he's saying they didn't even believe in the scriptures.
But okay, I get what you're saying. Also, because I don't know if you've watched any of the 119 ministries, they've used such tools similar to the Jewish Encyclopedia to then prove as evidence in other topics of what they were trying to say.
But in this topic, they want to discount it.
Yeah, they want to discredit it as not a valid source of information because they disagree with the lunar Sabbath. But in another topic that they cover, they'll use the Jewish Encyclopedia or something similar as a basis for evidence for the topic that they're trying to prove. So,
and I can say the same thing. Like where in Scripture does it say that Shabbat is a unbroken, continuous cycle since creation? Like there's so many references that in it that shows the lunar, solar Shabbat, and it lines up perfectly when you look at Scripture. But there's no reference that shows it's been continuous, unbroken, but it shows that new moon resets the month, which also resets Shabbat. It's like there's so many scriptures that say that. Again, Ezekiel 46:1-3 says that the inner gates will be open on new moons and Sabbaths and closed on the 6 working days. That's so clear.
Oh yeah, it's just abundantly clear. It's abundantly clear. There's I mean, it's really just trying to nitpick things in order to come to what you've already, in order to be able to come to the conclusion that you already made in the first place, which is, the difference between eisegesis and exegesis, right? And that's that,
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so many things that line up. Like oh, never mind. There you go. No, I was gonna say, it's like there's just so many things that when you're looking at something that it's just, how do so many things line up so perfectly if this is not the right calendar? I could see if it was like, okay, maybe 2 or 3 work, but then now look, there's so many other things that's like, okay, wait, this doesn't work. But again, even when you look at it, again, so many biblical scholars agree again, right, that Shavuot is in remembrance of Moses coming down with the law. So like, okay, well, let's see. Obviously, that's not necessarily that's non-biblical sources, but okay, let's test the Bible with that and see, okay, if it's true, these dates should line up perfectly, and it lines up perfectly. So if you read when Moses came to Mount Sinai, that whole time frame, because it literally gives you the date. So they came down on like the 15th or 16th, after the same as this month. Again, I'm paraphrasing. So when you look at that, okay, and then it says they arrived here on this date, which was like the 15th, which was like the 7th Shabbat. And then it says, okay, 3 days later, Yah came down, which would have been like 10 days. Again, I'm paraphrasing. And then he went up 40 days, 40 nights, which equals 50. So it's like 7 Shabbats plus 50 days, and then he's down with the 10 commandments. So let's see if that date and that date perfectly lines up with how to calculate when it says in Leviticus 23, count 7 Shabbats and 50 days. That's the exact same timing of Moses and that whole thing. So look at that and see if you come to that same date is what I would ask people. Just, and that to me, like when you do it yourself, you see, it's like, it's one thing hearing it from people, but when you actually sit down and calculate that yourself, it just gives you a totally new understanding. It's like you just feel the Holy Spirit saying, yes, this is why y'all put it this way, because, and it does, that is correct with those biblical scholars. So obviously we can't believe every biblical scholar on stuff. You have to test it against Scripture, and this does line up that, yes, that is for that reason, because why would it line up perfectly and come to the same date if that was not in remembrance? Again, that's a big deal. The 10 Commandments, that's huge. And that, why shouldn't we have a feast to remember the 10 Commandments? Like, it just, I don't know, it just all makes sense when you just look at everything.
Yep. Facts.
Absolutely. To find a clear answer to this question, we'll examine the Talmud, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Josephus, and various Roman historians and writers of that period. The Talmud. First of all, please understand that we do not believe in following the Talmud or looking at it as being authoritative for doctrine. We are not going to be using it for the purposes of telling me how or when to keep the Sabbath, except that we know that the Messiah was in agreement with the weekly Sabbath of the first century Judaism. Therefore, we will only use the Talmud to help us understand what the views of the first and second century Judaism were.
Wait, we don't subscribe to the Talmud at all whatsoever, but we're going to use the Talmud to prove our point.
And my thing is, how is this different than using the Jews encyclopedia to show that, yes, they did use them? He's using other references to kind of, but he's doing the same thing. So how is that? And again, if you look at Philo of Alexandria, he confirmed, again, so that's looking at writings. It's exactly what he's doing. But why is it okay when he does it, but he talks again? Oh, wait, it's like, this is not confirmed, but now we're going to look at non-biblical sources.
No, it actually makes sense. If you consider what he's saying, it makes perfect sense. He's not saying that he uses the Talmud as a resource for how to live. He's simply cross-referencing. He's saying, because we know based on Scripture what we both agree, which is to say the New King James Version, we both agree that the Messiah observed the Sabbath as first century Jews. Well, what did first century Jews believe? Now we'll go to the Talmud. because we know that the Talmud, even in its error in, all of doctrine, we know that it's not like it's everything in there is a lie. We just don't agree with it to say this is how to run our lives for authority. But what's in it is accurate for what we need it for. It actually makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I can see what you're saying with that, and so, but it's the same thing on the other end, to where you look at Philo again of Alexandria. He lived at the same time as Yahushua and Paul. He literally was a Jew, and he clearly says that the full moon is the second Shabbat. Like, he actually confirms that it is based on the moon too, based on his, and he was living at the same time. I don't know when the Talmud was written, who wrote it, they were living, but he lived at the same time.
Here's the thing about the Talmud. The Talmud is based on oral traditions that were passed on orally, right? So they got changed and altered along the way, right? When it was actually finally committed to writing, the Talmud, by the time they committed it to writing, they had already adopted the calendar of Hillel too, right? So by that time, they'd already made the adjustments. So yeah, I mean, yes, you can use the Talmud in certain circumstances to confirm something, but you only want to take it with a grain of salt, right? You don't want to say, well, because it says this, that's the end of it. No, you can use it as a second or third or fourth witness, but you don't want to base something primarily on that. And what he's doing here, he's using it as a witness to his position, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but when you take the overwhelming evidence from Scripture and disregard that, and then say, "Well, the Talmud confirms what I'm saying," that's an error.
Here it is in a nutshell. Just like I mentioned earlier with the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? You discredit something, but then utilize it to prove your point. But then in a different point, you would use the same thing that you tried to discredit before that wasn't valid as evidence. Now something else becomes valid, right? So here's the thing. The Jewish Encyclopedia isn't, for him in this video, it wasn't valid evidence, right? But then he goes to the Babylonian Talmud, which is a Jewish book. It's literally a Jewish book. So,
and now, if we really want to go into historical evidence, right? There is encyclopedia references of scholars not knowing when the Sabbaths stopped being, precisely when the Sabbath stopped being counted by the moon and switched over to the continuous weekly cycle. Now, if they had always been on a continuous weekly cycle, then why would scholars not be able to determine exactly what year they stopped being counted by the lunar cycle? You know what I'm saying?
And I posted in our chat. I posted just this. Now this is Philo's writings. Again, he lived the same time as Yahushua and Paul. So just looking at him writing from like a kind of an outside perspective, he wrote about the festivals in detail. Like, this is how they practice the festivals on these days, and just look at each kind of what he said. And the first one,
which Brother Ari brought this to my attention. Actually, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, and that's where I started to look into it after I kind of relooked at that summit, and I looked at his
Brother
piece.
Ari, man, oh my goodness, he is such a scholar, man.
I was like, let me just look into this. So I started to look myself, and this is what I got from Philo's writing. So he, in this piece, he just kind of confirms that the middle of the week, the second week, the 15th, is a full moon. Mm-hmm. So that shows you that the weeks are based on the moon cycle. That's, again, I put like 4 screenshots of just different stuff, but this is just showing that the second week is full moon, and then he said the fourth commandment has reference, sacred seventh day as it may have passed in sacred and holy manner. Some states keep the holy festival and the Sabbath only once in the moon, counting from the new moon. As the day of Yahuwah in the nations, Jews kept every 7th day regularly, each interval of 6 days. But it says starting at the new moon.
Starting at the new moon after each interval.
Yeah. And he's clearly, again, he's alive. He's not like somebody that lived 500 years later. He lived at the same time. He's writing this stuff
At the same time.
That to me gives credibility, or he was there, and he's literally agreeing that it was based on the moon cycles. And again, it just makes you look in the sky. Why would it perfectly line up with 50%, 100%, 50%, and then like 2%? Like it's a perfect flow. You know, it's like new moon and the Sabbath fall on new moon days, and they're all like that perfect half moon and full moon. It just makes so much sense. Like wow, it's just perfect. And then this one. Oh yeah, must is I think so with preceding Sabbath as the second waxes in comparison. But it just shows you that it is tied to the moon. Like he's literally saying like Sabbaths and moons in like the same sentence, and how it's tied to the moon. And then I think the last one was just showing that he said during the new moon they would fast. So that would just mean when you see that, and again you references to scripture, because the biggest thing when it comes to like the manna that fell down, people say, well, what happened on the new moon days? If this is a true calendar, what did they do? And he was there. He said they fasted on new moon days. It just, to me, it fits perfectly. It doesn't like contradict, and that makes perfect sense that they fasted.
And it's also perfect for optimal health. You know?
So this is that's just, again, he wrote about it a lot. Like there's so much. These are the only screenshots I took, but there are obviously hundreds of pages and stuff of his writings, and he's observing the feast. So
the Talmud is actually a rather good source, because although it was compiled about 130 years after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, parts of it act as a historical reference for things that were going on when the temple was still standing. The Talmud is composed of 3 parts. There is the Mishnah, which is the central focal point of the whole Talmud. There is the Gemara, which is the commentary on the Mishnah. Then there's Rashi's commentary on both. The Mishnah simply records the beliefs of the first century Judaism. It speaks often about the views of 2 Jewish scholars called Shammai and Hillel. They were leaders of 2 often opposing schools of thought called houses. Hillel and Shammai lived from about 50 BCE to about 50 CE, so they were alive during Yeshua's ministry on the earth. The Talmud records about 300 differences of opinion between both houses. In Judaism, the views of the house of Hillel usually prevailed over the views of the house of Shammai. As you will see, the Talmud is pretty clear that the lunar Sabbath was not observed by Beth Hillel, Beth Shammai, or any Jewish man living in the first century. In our first example, we will be examining a difference of opinion between Hillel and Shammai on what blessing needed to be recited if the new moon falls on a Sabbath. Arzera replied, "The new moon is different from a festival, since it's mentioned is included in the benediction on the sanctity of the day in the morning and the evening prayers. It is also included in that of the additional prayer." Did Beth Shammai uphold the view that the mention of the new moon is to be included? Was it not, in fact, taught if a new moon falls on the Sabbath? Beth Shammai ruled, one recites in his additional prayer 8 benedictions, and Beth Hillel ruled 7. This is indeed a difficulty. Of course, if they were really keeping the lunar Sabbath, the new moon can never fall on a Sabbath, because the lunar Sabbath is never on the first day of the month. The difference of opinion would have been recorded if they kept the lunar Sabbath. Next, we'll see that the Mishnah records of the first century temple priests did with non-meat portions of the Passover lamb. Mishnah: the bones and the sinews and the nothar of the Paschal lamb are to be burnt on the 16th. If the 16th falls on the Sabbath, they are to be burnt on the 17th, because they do not override either the Sabbath or the festival. With the lunar Sabbath, there is no such thing as the 16th day of the month falling on the Sabbath. These are not men who are trying to figure out how to fit a weekly Sabbath into a Babylonian life. It is a reference to the acts of the first century priests, who certainly did not keep the lunar Sabbath.
Now, this is actually 100%. These substitutions are 100% unnecessary, and they were made because they had adopted the Hillel calendar, which went on the Saturday, right? None of this was necessary up until this point, because they had not adopted this calendar, and the Sabbath had never fallen on those days. These substitutions were concocted. Because they all of a sudden had a conflict of what to do if this falls on a Sabbath, which never had occurred before.
And remember this: the Bible says that Satan came to change times and laws. Revelation 3:9 says the people who call themselves Jews and are not, they're from the synagogue of Satan. And if you guys, I don't know how much knowledge people have of the Talmud, but for me, if a book says it's okay to have, sex with kids, sorry my language, I would not use that at all for reference. I'm sorry, but right. You can literally have sex with and like drink blood or something. But does the Bible tells us to drink blood or not drink blood? So if a book, this is from the doctrines of the devil, so of course it would not have the truth in there when it comes to Shabbat. And again, it clearly showed that they did use the moon, like from again, who would you want to believe? The Talmud, which talks that you can have sex with kids, drink blood, or Philo, who lived at the same time. He even said that this came 152, how long after? And Philo lived at the same time. So like, will his writings be more accurate than
120 years after?
So, and again, it's just like, why was the moon put up there? And why does it go through a perfect 29, 30-day cycle? It literally is a clock. Every day has its own phase. Yeah. And if the middle of the week shows, middle of the month shows a full moon, it's just like so why would the Shabbat not be tied to the Moed, which is an appointed time? It's an appointment day. It's a set time. The moon rejuvenates the set time, so like Yah knew this would happen. And I believe that's why it's kind of it's sort of a mystery, because just like the Shavuot, if he put it just kind of, I think just like directly there, obviously Satan came to change times and laws. They would have somehow took that away and we probably never even think about using the new moon, but it's still there. Just have to kind of search the scriptures diligently, let the Holy Spirit confirm. Because for me, when I first heard this, it was like the Holy Spirit, I got like hot, like, that fire was like, it just felt, yes, this is right. And then there's so much confirmation. And even Yahushua, when he's talking about that, if you look at John, it said, what did it say? Yahushua, the Feast of Tabernacles, right? That ends on the 21st, which means the next day, the 22nd, would be, the Shabbat, right?
Weekly Shabbat.
And again, you can even look at it if you want to. It says on the last day he went up to the mountains or something, and then the next day he went out. And then I think the next chapter is, it's literally a sequence, because it says he left here, and it says so you could tell it's the same day, and like from chapter to chapter. But it says he prayed for a lady, and they got mad because it was the Sabbath, which was the 22nd. So like again, when you look at the calendar, look through scripture, it continuously confirms that Shabbat is the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of the month. It's throughout the first and renewed covenant. Like
it continuously confirms it.
Yeah,
there's virtually no doubt, and it's not even about proving this at this point. It should be Saturday keepers proving their point, right?
Yeah,
they should be able to prove Saturday
work day.
They should be able to prove the Saturday, not us prove that the biblical calendar is correct. They should be able to prove the Saturday, and they can't. All they can do is say, "Oh, continuous weekly cycle," and every 7 days. That's all they can say, really.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then this might be semantics for some people, but it's so simple. When like he's mentioning, and he's reading out of the Talmud. I don't even like saying the Talmud. I call it by its actual original full name, Babylonian Talmud. They kind of skip over the Babylonian part and just say Talmud, like it's literally only a Jewish thing. Like, no, it's called the Babylonian Talmud for a reason, because guess what? It originated in Babylon. What else was in Babylon? A hell of a lot of paganism. Yeah. You know how many things that Israel got, pagan ideals and practices and following from Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
but then they just cut off the name Babylonian and then just say Talmud and then adopt it as this is our oral tradition that we pass down from generation to generation, and it's legit. No, because that is a part of the Jewish religion, which is why Jewish isn't the correct way to follow. If we were told and taught, I was telling my kids today this when I was doing their Sabbath lesson. We're taught to follow the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, right? We're not supposed to follow man. We're supposed to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. But in Judaism, or Jewish, or reading out of the Talmud, if your rabbi tells you to do something that's contrary to the law, you're supposed to follow the rabbi. That's what they teach.
Yeah, which is actually what the Talmud says. The Talmud actually says if the rabbi says something that's contrary to the Torah, you do what the rabbi says. and then it falls on the rabbi, not on you, because you're supposed to follow what the rabbi says, which is the exact opposite of what Scripture says.
Hold on, and let me reference one thing, and we can move forward because I want to finish this video today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say if you apply that same logic. So you're telling me that if the brother who touched the ark when it was tipping over, if he was told to touch the ark, he wouldn't have gotten killed? The person who told him to touch the ark would have got killed? No, the Most High is serious about his word. He said, follow my instructions. But that's it.
Disciples lived. The Mishnah also recorded the following rule regarding the meal offerings. Mishnah. A man may offer a meal offering consisting of 60 tenths and bring them in one vessel if a man said, I take upon myself to offer 60 tenths. He may bring them in one vessel. But if he said, I take upon myself to offer 61 tenths, he must bring the 60 in one vessel and the one in another vessel. For since the congregation bring it on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, when it falls on the Sabbath, 61 tenths as a meal offering, it is enough for an individual that his meal offering be less by 1/10 than that of the congregation. Obviously, this is a record of what went on while the temple was still standing, because after that time, there would be no place to take it. With a lunar Sabbath, there is never a time when the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles falls on any day other than the Sabbath, the 15th day of the 7th month. Obviously, the recorded practices of the first century Judaism, while the temple still stood, indicate that they did not keep a lunar Sabbath. They kept the Sabbath on a recurring 7-day week, just as given in Genesis chapter 1. Independent.
Oh, like it was given in Genesis chapter 1. Oh.
Yeah. Like the entire lunisolar calendar.
Exactly the way it was given in Genesis 1. Exactly.
You can find the entire lunisolar calendar in Genesis 1.
Therefore, since Yeshua kept the Sabbath along with the rest of the Jews of that period, he did not participate in a lunar Sabbath, a doctrine that doesn't appear to exist in Judaism at that time. We should also mention
even
that
though
if you ever read
Philo
the
says
Talmud
it
in depth,
does,
you'll come away with one clear impression. Right. They debated about everything. Something as major of a change in when the Sabbath was observed ought to have at least been debated somewhere. After all, they debated about every fine point of the law. The lack of such a debate
was very much
volumes.
debated.
Number 2, the Dead Sea Scrolls and Josephus. The Dead Sea Scrolls are considered by scholars to be authored by the Essenes, a sect in first century Judaism. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are a number of extra biblical scrolls which appear to shed light on what this sect believed and practiced. Understanding what they believed can be helpful in determining whether or not the lunar Sabbath was being observed by mainstream Judaism at that time. It is generally undisputed, even by lunar Sabbatarians, that the authors of these scrolls did not keep a lunar Sabbath. Rather, the
Actually, that's
shows
not.
Well, I was going to say that. No, I haven't read the Dead Sea Scrolls, so I have to rely on you guys. But isn't there something in there that actually does reference?
It actually does. Yes, the Dead Sea Scrolls actually do. Interestingly enough, reference the lunar Sabbath.
They tell you specifically about the 13th month. They tell you how to calculate it.
Yeah, it's. See, this is all purely conjecture. Now, to be fair to 119 Ministries, they did pull this study from someone else's work, so
again, but you're still held liable because you posted it.
Right.
Put it out there.
Right.
You're still held accountable.
Yeah.
you don't get fully off the hook.
The Dead Sea Scrolls totally support the moon Sabbaths. It's not even a question. They totally support the moon Sabbaths. It's utter nonsense to say they didn't.
Was that they observed a recurring 7-day weekly cycle independent of the moon phases. We know of no one who disputes this. The calendrical scroll and the songs of the Sabbath sacrifice confirms this. Of course, lunar Sabbatarians generally will teach that this Jewish sect was wrong about the Sabbath. But in the book of Josephus, he speaks much about the Essenes. Josephus was a first century Jewish historian who wrote much about the life in Judea during the first century. He goes into great detail.
So he just mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls and didn't go into them? What? Are you serious?
I mean, if I remember correctly, now it has been a couple of years since I've seen this. If I remember correctly, he is actually going to go into it, but he's going to cherry pick stuff that
okay,
it's going to cherry pick certain things that seem to indicate one thing, just like they did with the count to Pentecost, right?
Oh, okay, got you. Because I'm about to say he was introducing the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then was glossed over and mentioned Josephus to go into Josephus. All right, I'm gonna go.
As to how the practices of the Essenes were different than others. He mentions everything from how the Essenes don't carry anything with them when they travel, or to how they regard oil to be defilement. In Wars of the Jews, Josephus speaks of them in no less than 2,000 words, describing over 100 characteristics of their way of life. So, did Josephus mention that they kept a Sabbath on a day that was different than the rest of Judaism? Wars of the Jews. Moreover, they are stricter than any other.
Now, why would someone today describing a motorist say that they stop at red lights and that they stop at stop signs and that green lights mean go? No one describing a motorist today would go into that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For the Jews and resting from their labors on the seventh day. For they not only get their food ready the day before, that they may not be obliged to kindle a fire on that day, but they will not move any vessel out of its place, nor go to stool thereon. In this, Josephus even goes so far as to say that the Essenes are stricter than any other of the Jews in resting from their labors on the seventh day.
Now, what does that actually say?
There's any disagreement?
What's this actually saying? It says on the seventh day. Yeah, the seventh day from what? That's the whole point. Is it the seventh day in a continuous weekly cycle that somehow magically spreads back to creation, even despite all of the changes and date lines and so forth? No.
When the Sabbath was? Wouldn't it seem strange that Josephus would mention that the Essenes were stricter in their resting from the labors on the Sabbath, but not bother to mention that the Essenes held a Sabbath on a totally different day than the other Jews of that period?
Oh, totally different day from because they were doing it on the exact same day as everyone else because they were doing it by the moon, which is clearly in. I'm gonna stop. I'm done.
Keeping a different day than the rest of Judaism, Josephus would not have been able to say that they were even resting on the seventh day to begin with. He would have had to say they're resting on some other day. There is no record in the Dead Sea Scrolls of the Essenes disagreeing with other groups as to when the Sabbath was. In fact, there is no historical record of any Jewish sects disagreeing with each other on what day the Sabbath was. In another interesting note, Josephus speaks of one of the large towers that were built in Jerusalem, Wars of the Jews. And the last was erected above the top of Pastoforia, where one of the priests stood, of course, and he gave a signal beforehand with a trumpet. At the beginning of every seventh day, in the evening twilight, as also at the evening when...
Yeah. Just really quickly, I just look at put it in perspective for people, listening or watching this later. Think about this way. If we're, let's say we're going to go get some lunch. But, all right, I'll meet you at the restaurant Friday night. Okay, so wait, which day is Friday night? Do we know what Friday is? So, okay, I'm going to meet you on Sabbath. Okay, wait, which day is Sabbath? You know what it is. So you again, like Brother Joel, Professor S was saying, it's common knowledge. So why would you have to point it out if you know what it is? So it's like Friday night. Okay, which day is Friday night? You know what day Friday night is, right?
Right. What's understood doesn't have to be said. If it was something that was of a full consensus, everybody had the same understanding, you don't have to mention it. The things that you do mention are the things that are abnormal, that you have to place emphasis on so that so that people in the future won't get confused. If everybody understands, new moon and then 6 working days and then the Sabbath, and that's the consensus, why do we have to say, oh yeah, specifically, the seventh day Sabbath is technically on the 8th day of the month because, we also have to consider that new moon is a completely separate day. And they all knew that.
And that day was finished, as giving notice to the people when they were to stop work and when they were to work again. So his report is that a trumpet was blown at the beginning of every seventh day to mark when the people should stop working and begin working. As an interesting side note, archaeological finds concur with his comments about the place of trumpeting. When we excavated the beautifully paved Herodian street adjacent to the southern wall and near the southwestern corner of the enclosure wall, we found a particular large ashlar block. On the inside was a niche where a man might stand, especially if the ashlar were joined to another, which would enlarge the niche. On the outside was a carefully and elegantly inscribed Hebrew inscription, "To the place of trumpeting to declare." If the restoration of the word declare is correct, the rest of the missing part of the inscription probably went on to tell us more about the declaring of the beginning and the end.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's
The
purely
stone had been
conjecture.
toppled during the Roman destruction of the temple onto the street below, where it had been laying for nearly 2,000 years until it was uncovered. It must have originally come from the pinnacle of the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount, from a spot on top of the temple chambers where a priest would blow the trumpet on the Sabbath eve.
Now let's say here,
announce the
if it was as simple as counting 7 days, why would it be necessary for a watchman to be on the wall and blast the trumpet to announce it? Why would that be necessary if it's as simple as counting 7 days? It's I'll leave it at that. Sorry.
Look at Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? The scripture says that Passover is the 14th day of the month. If we're going on a 7-day continuous cycle, then Passover is the Sabbath. So you're breaking the Sabbath because you're working during the day portion, and then you begin to observe at night on the 14th, and then the next day, which shouldn't be a Sabbath because that should be Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that is actually Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a Sabbath according to Scripture.
Yeah. It just becomes so convoluted and doesn't make any sense. The true simplicity of the calendar. It's. I mean, yeah. It's just so simple. There's no reason to impose all of this other garbage on top of it. It's a bunch of crap.
Sabbath and the cessation of labor, and announce from the following evening the departure of the Sabbath and the resumption of all labor. The entire city was visible from the spot on the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. The clarion call of the trumpet would reach the farthest markets of the city. Such a scene is recounted by Josephus in his work, The Jewish War. Josephus also records that Agatharchides, a 2nd century BCE Greek historian, wrote something quite interesting about Ptolemy's defeat of Jerusalem against Apion. When Agatharchides had premised this story and had jested upon Stratonis for her superstition, he gives a like example of what was reported concerning us, and he writes thus: "There are a people called Jews, and dwell in a city, the strongest of all other cities, which inhabitants call Jerusalem, and are accustomed to rest on every 7th day, on which times they make no use of their arms, nor meddle with husbandry, nor take cares of any affairs of life, but spread out their hands in their holy place, and pray till the evening. Now it came to pass, when Ptolemy, the son of Lagus, came into the city with his army, that these men, in observing this mad custom of theirs, instead of guarding the city, suffered their country to submit itself to a bitter lord, and their law was openly proven to have commanded a foolish practice." Ptolemy was the general of Alexander the Great, who took over Jerusalem in 322 BCE. We see that the Jews would not defend themselves or take up arms on the Sabbath, which was every 7th day. If we were to describe the Sabbath-keeping practice of lunar Sabbatarians, we certainly wouldn't describe their Sabbath-keeping as something they did every 7th day. Rather, we would mention that they only kept a Sabbath on certain days of the month. Therefore, it's quite evident that Josephus was describing a practice laid out for us in the beginning, when God created the first week, and that is to rest every 7th day, without moon interruptions. Number 3, Roman historians and writers. There seems to be a growing trend among lunar Sabbath keepers to refer to people who keep a recurring weekly Sabbath as Saturday keepers, as if we were following the pagan Roman week rather than the week that we believe to be in the scriptures.
You are.
The truth is this: the Jews did not want the holy Sabbath to be associated with Saturn, an idol that had nothing to do with Judaism. The name Saturday, or the day of Saturn, originated with the pagans, not the Jews. In fact, where we live, where 119 Ministries is headquartered, Saturday is called Sabado. Much of Latin America are the scattered Sephardic Jews. Sabado, linguistically speaking, came from the Hebrew word Shabbat, or Sabbath. Thus, a focus on the English word of Saturday, coming from the Roman day of Saturn, is in fact being very culturally centric. The Jews repeatedly and unequivocally refer to the 7th day of the week as the Sabbath. However, when it comes to determining whether or not the Jews of the 1st century kept the Sabbath using a lunar Sabbath, or, as we believe, a recurring weekly Sabbath, examining the records of Roman historians and other writers can be very helpful. By the admission of lunar Sabbath keepers and clear historical record, the Romans did not follow the moon phases when determining the weeks, or even the months for that matter. For this reason, we can look into the writings of Roman historians and other writers to see if the Romans associated the Jewish Sabbath with their Saturday or day of Saturn. If they did associate the Sabbath with their day of Saturn in the 1st century or before, this would be undeniable evidence that the Jewish week and the Roman week were both keeping the same recurring weekly cycle. As we will soon see, there is no doubt that Roman historians and other writers explicitly and repeatedly consider the time of the Jewish Sabbath keeping to be linked with the 7th day of the Roman week, which is repeating 7-day cycle independent of moon phases. 70 to 84 CE. Pratinus, a Roman soldier who lived from 40 CE to 103 CE, wrote a book on military strategy. In it, he writes, "The defied Augustus Vespasian attacked the Jews on the day of Saturn, a day on which it is sinful for them to do any business." The original Latin version of this book has Saturninus for Saturn, confirming that the Romans associated the Sabbath day with their day of Saturn, which is on the 7th day of the week.
Okay, I gotta pause it. All this right here confirms this historical record. It just confirms that prior to the Jewish people assimilating to the Gregorian calendar, so this is when they were still separated, right? The Roman Saturn day just happened to fall on when the Sabbath actually occurred. That doesn't prove that they were actually both on a completely reoccurring 7-day continuing cycle. It just proves, like today, like the Sabbath could fall on a Saturday for 4 consecutive Saturdays. That doesn't mean that Saturday is the only Sabbath, because it's going to move again, because the two calendars are completely different.
Look at real quick. Can you pull up what the Britannica.com? I just posted in the group just what they said. Obviously it's because he just said that the Romans did not have like an unbreakable 7-day, or that they, since they were pretty much keeping the same calendar since the beginning of time, is what he said about the Romans. But it's just interesting how when you actually look at, you start to do your own research and look at history. Can you make that bigger, or is that, I don't know if it can. Okay. Now this is from the Britannica.com, and it just shows like evidence indicating, however, that the Jews may have borrowed the idea of the week from the Mesopotamia. Yeah, for the Sumerians and the Babylonians divided the year into weeks of 7 days, and each one of them designated his day of recreation. So he said, how did they borrow it from them if they had the original calendar? He said the Romans did not, they pretty much had the same calendar since the beginning of time. But, if you dig deeper and do your own research, you can take this and start to go with it. But, they named it after the 7 planets in the sky. So it's like, oh, it's a coincidence that there were 7 objects in the sky. So what happened to New Moon Day? And they divorced it, and they said adopted by the Romans. So how did they keep the same calendar since the beginning of time if this was adopted by the Romans? Again, the Babylonians were one of the first people to start messing with stuff. So it's just, just again, when you look at history, you see that that's not true. They did adopt it, from one calendar from another. Like they kept adopting it from each other. So how did that stay since the beginning of time?
Great point, brother. Great point. That was one of them like timely punchlines. When you find a smoking gun, like right on time. What's that little that meme is like when you find the scripture you've been looking for?
Just like I did my own research, we all have access to information. I just recommend everybody do their own research. But I started digging into it just to make sure I following the right kind. I didn't want to just listen to anybody. I wanted to do my own. And the more I research, the more I see that this is the true calendar.
Facts.
This, of course, is where the Roman day of Saturday originated as the day of Saturn. Since this book was written a mere 14 years after Vespasian's or Titus's destruction of Jerusalem, this is obviously very strong historical evidence directly from a first-century eyewitness tying in the Sabbath with the recurring 7-day cycle of the Romans. 63 BCE to 229 CE. Cassius Dio, a Roman historian who lived from 155 to 229 CE, using the historical annals of the Roman Empire, wrote about 3 battles which the Roman Empire had with the Jews. The first battle was during a time when Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, 2 brothers who were the offspring of the Maccabees, were engaged in a dispute over who would rule. The Romans, through the actions of Pompey, came in and settled the dispute, siding with Hyrcanus. While speaking of Pompey's battle, the Sabbath is mentioned. The setting is 63 BCE. Most of the city, to be sure, he took without any trouble, as he was received by the party of Hyrcanus, but the temple itself, which the other party had occupied, he captured only with difficulty, for it was on high ground and was fortified by a wall of its own, and if they had continued defending it on all days alike, he could not have gotten possession of it. As it was, they made an excavation of what are called the days of Saturn, and by doing no work at all on those days, afforded the Romans an opportunity in this interval to batter down the wall. The latter, on the learning of the superstitious awe of theirs, made no serious attempts on the rest of the time, but on those days, when they came around in succession, assaulted most vigorously. Thus the defenders were captured on the day of Saturn, without making any defense, and all the wealth was plundered. The kingdom was given to Hyrcanus, and Aristobulus was carried away. Cassius Dio, Roman History. So the Romans took advantage of the fact that the Jews would not work on the Sabbath. And when was the Sabbath? Again, the weekly Sabbath coincides with the Roman days of Saturn.
Again, back in those days, it just so happened that the day fell on the true Sabbath, that they just aligned it. Because think about it. If the Roman Saturn day aligned with the Sabbath always, then every battle that Rome got with the Jews, they would just wait until the Sabbath immediately. But as you can see, as they were reading, they had difficulty with certain things in certain areas because they didn't know. They had to learn, like, oh, they left their defenses down on this specific day. That's their Sabbath. Okay, now we're going to attack. But that should be the military strategy going right into any battle or war that they have with the Jews. If this was the case, they already know, like, okay, you know, they're going to be fighting and defending on these days, but they're not going to be fighting on this day. So then go and attack on this day only. And it'll save you all the time, effort, lives lost, casualties, all of that.
And real quick, just think about this for, you know, people listening. These other nations and groups, Romans and Babylon, did they follow the Most High? Did they follow pagan belief systems? And when you follow pagan belief systems, do you think those I don't know, spirit strongholds that they're worshiping are going to lead them? Hey, make sure you follow the right day. This is the day that Yah sanctified. Do you think they're going to lead them to there or lead them to a different day? So then they can, again, align with what Satan said to change times and laws. Like, you're following something pagan, but you have the right days and you're doing stuff right. Look at where we are now, when people have golden images and all this stuff that they believe because of the time has passed. They adopted all this pagan stuff. You don't think that happened during that time too, but they kept the right calendar. That don't make sense to me.
Facts.
Battle listed by Cassius Dio occurred in 36 BCE. This is the one that resulted in the very first King Herod coming to power. The Jews, indeed, had done much injury to the Romans, but they suffered far more themselves. The first of them to be captured were those who were fighting for the precinct of their god, and then the rest on the day, even then called the day of Saturn. And so excessive were they in their devoted to religion that the first set of prisoners, those who had been captured along with the temple, obtained leave from Sosius when the day of Saturn came round again, and went up into the temple and there performed all the customary rites, together with the rest of the people. These people Antony entrusted to a certain Herod to govern, but Antigonus he bounded to a cross and flogged, a punishment no other king had suffered at the hands of the Romans, and afterwards slew him. Cassius Dio, Roman History. Note that Cassius Dio reports the Jews as keeping the customary rites at the temple on the day even then called the day of Saturn. This indicates that the Sabbath wasn't only called the day of Saturn during his lifetime, but it was also called the day of Saturn back in 36 BCE, well before Yeshua was born in Bethlehem. Next, he records that 70 CE Jerusalem destruction was on the Sabbath, which he again calls the day of Saturn, 70 to 229 CE. Thus was Jerusalem destroyed on the very day of Saturn, the day which even now the Jews reverence most. From that time forth, it was ordered that the Jews who continued to observe their ancestral customs should pay an annual tribute of 2 denarii to Jupiter Capitoline. In consequence of this success, both generals received the title of imperator, but neither got that of Judaicus, although all the other honors that were fitting on the occasion of so magnificent a victory, including triumphal arches, were voted to them. Cassius Dio, Roman History. So his report is that the Jews kept the Sabbath on the day of Saturn from 63 BCE up until his day, no later than 229 CE. His report also agrees with Frontius' account of the 70 CE battle.
His report was talking about that specific date, not rounding it out. So take the conjecture and throw it out the window.
100 CE. The historian Cornelius Tacitus, 56 CE to 117 CE, after suggesting that the Jews kept the Sabbath out of laziness, also associated the Sabbath with the Roman idol, Saturn. They are said to have devoted the 7th day to rest, because that day brought an end to their troubles. Later, finding idleness alluring, they gave up the 7th year as well to sloth. Others maintain that they do this in honor of Saturn, either because their religious principles are derived from the Idae, who are supposed to have been driven out with Saturn and become the ancestors of the Jewish people, or else because of the 7 constellations which govern the lives of men. The star of Saturn moves in the topmost orbit and exercises peculiar influence, and also because most of the heavenly bodies move around their courses in multiples of 7. Again, the fact that a pagan associated Sabbath keeping with Saturn demonstrates that the Roman week's day of Saturn, Saturday, was concurrent with what Yahweh calls the Sabbath day.
I'm glad that was cleared up.
Look, check it out. Within 1 year, within one Gregorian year, one Greco-Roman year, from January to December, we're gonna have.
You can have as many as 4 Saturdays as the Sabbath in a year.
Yeah, let's just say 2 to 4, right? So from 2 to 4 times within a year time frame, the Shabbat will fall on a Saturday. Yeah. That doesn't mean that the Shabbat and Saturday are always moving together congruently.
Yeah, none of this is actually conclusive.
And then the references that he mentioned, one was like 46 BCE, then the next one was like 60 something BCE. Dude, if it can occur between 2 to 4 times in 1 year, of course it can fall again on the same day if you're going 15, 20 years in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, you was about to say something. Go ahead.
Oh no, that's it.
Okay.
An eyewitness from the 1st century who has no axe to grind in regards to when the Sabbath should be observed. He wrote this a mere 30 years after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, 28 BC to 1 BCE. Tibullus, a Latin poet who lived from 54 BCE to 19 BCE, references the Sabbath in one of his elegies. The poet is quoted by Jehu Michael in his paper entitled The Jewish Sabbath in Latin Classical Writers. In this journal article, he says, Tibullus, again, gives us a glimpse of the influence of the Sabbath on the Romans. The poet, sick in a foreign land, complains of his loneliness. Neither mother nor sister has he there to nurse him, nor is Delia with him. She who had inquired of all the gods before permitting him to leave the city, says Tibullus. All promised a return, yet did nothing stay her from looking back in tears and terror on my journey. Yea, even I, her comforter, after I had given my parting charge, sought still in my disquiet for reasons to linger and delay. Either birds or words of evil omen were my pretexts, or there was a holy day of Saturn to detain me. The day of which the poet speaks, of course, is Saturday, or as Posgate puts it, the Jewish Sabbath, on which no work was to be undertaken, and in the implication is clear that unwillingness to set off on a journey on the Sabbath day was no unusual thing among the inhabitants of Rome. For Tibullus is enumerating the common reasons for the postponement of journeys of which he was only too ready to avail himself. The Jewish Sabbath in the Latin classical writers.
And he wants to say
it's interesting that Romans would have any concern at all about.
He wants to say our arguments are weak when he's using something as obscure as that. I mean, did you get from the last slide he showed Saturday being Sabbath? Did anyone get that? Oh, bro, you're muted.
Oh, my bad. I was just laughing.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
you wouldn't get from that last slide he showed that Saturday is Sabbath. I mean, and he tries to say that we have weak arguments. I mean, that's like one of the weakest. And oh man,
While traveling on the Sabbath. J. Hugh Michael references another writing by the poet Ovid, who lived from 43 BCE to 17 CE. Still more impressive is the witness of Ovid. In the Ars Mortuoria, he instructs the young Roman who is desirous of finding an object for his affections how he should set about his search. The quest need not take him far afield. There is no lack of suitable damsels in Rome. The poet even specifies the parts of Rome where the quest of the amorous youth is most likely to be crowned with success. He should not neglect Venus, the seventh day observed as holy by the Syrian Jew. The first part of this direction can only mean that the youth...
Oh, interesting. Venus. No, not even Saturn.
should visit the temple of Venus when her grief for Adonis was commemorated on the anniversary of his death. Similarly, the second part must mean that he should attend the Sabbath services held in the Jewish synagogues. Is it possible to attach any other meaning to the advice that the youth should not avoid the seventh day observed by the Syrian Jew?
Oh my goodness.
And what meaning is there in the council unless Roman maidens won't to attend those services? Is it not easy to think that it was the poet's intention that the young Roman should be enamored of a Jewess? The Jewish Sabbath and Latin classical writers. The work that J. Hughes Michael references is Ars Mortuoria, which is written in approximately 1 BCE. Thus, it is evident that the Romans were associating the seventh day of their Roman week with the Sabbath. But was Sabbath keeping really this tied to their culture?
What'd you say?
Which was 8 days at the time. At the time, the Romans had an 8-day week, not a 7-day week. So they were associating the seventh day of their 8-day week. Oh my goodness. Ridiculous.
119 CE. The Sabbath does appear to be closely entwined to the weekly cycle of the first century Romans. This is evidenced by the writings of Suetonius. Suetonius was a Roman historian who wrote Lives of 12 Caesars in 119 CE while describing the life of Tiberius Caesar. The grammarian Diogenes, who used to lecture every Sabbath at Rhodes, would not admit Tiberius when he came to hear him on a different day, but sent a message by a common slave of his, putting him off to the seventh day. When this man waited before the emperor's door at Rome to pay his respects, Tiberius took no further revenge than to bid him return 7 years later. Suetonius, The Life of Tiberius. Rhodes was a major schooling center for Roman families. It's interesting that the seventh day is referred to as the Sabbath in Roman literature, especially when it is written by a pagan historian who was even the Roman emperor's secretary for a time. Wikipedia entry on Suetonius. It appears that J. Hugh Michael's...
Oh, no, not Wikipedia, bro.
Yeah, we couldn't get more factual than that.
Bro, killing me. Killing me.
Reference to the Roman poets, as well as this reference from Suetonius, is a strong indication that the seventh-day Sabbath had become more tied to Roman society than most people actually realize. Possibly, this is one of the reasons Josephus said, "The masses have long since shown a keen desire to adopt our religious observances, and there is not one city, Greek or barbarian, nor a single nation, to which our custom of abstaining from work on the seventh day has not spread, and where our fasts and the lighting of lamps and many of our prohibitions in the matter of food are not observed." In consideration of these things, it appears to us that the Romans picked up the recurring 7-day week from the Jews, not the other way around.
That's where it came from. That's where it came from.
Remember when I said earlier that the Roman calendar originated as a lunar calendar?
Yeah, yeah. Because all ancient calendars did.
Yes.
Every ancient calendar, if you go back 2,000 years, every single ancient calendar, regardless of where it was, whether it was in Asia or Africa or Australia or wherever, every ancient calendar was lunar.
Yep.
5 centuries or longer, The Romans had kept an 8-day week, with the days being named by the letters of the alphabet A through H. They did not keep a 7-day week until they came into more contact with Sabbath-keeping Jews in early centuries BCE. The fact that they named the days of the week...
He just destroyed his own arguments there, man. He just destroyed his own arguments because the Romans were keeping an 8-day week at the time of Messiah.
And also, when you look at, again, like a lot of the different nations, you know, obviously I could probably even do a study later on like the 12 tribes and who they are, all that stuff. I mean, I don't even really know. I haven't studied that a lot, but it feels like when you look at different cultures and what they practice and believe in, you know, some still have like the essence of truth in it, even though it's surrounded by paganism. Like, for example, in China, obviously they are anti Bible and God and all that stuff, but they still operate off of a lunar calendar. Their new year was the new moon in February, right? Because again, it's like they still have that, and they say that's one of the most ancient calendars in the world. So how is that one of the most ancient? And they still use a moon-based calendar for their new year and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you read Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, which is a great book.
Great book.
If you read that, you'll see where the divergence came in, where everything started off with the Bible and then it diverted, right? And
I would love to read that book.
Oh man, great book. You'll probably need a dictionary to read it though, because it was written in the 1800s, so
okay.
It's got a lot of vocabulary that is not used commonly anymore. But great book, by the way.
Week after various planetary idols does not prove that they originated the recurring 7-day week. The naming of the days after planetary idols appears to have originated with either the Babylonians or the Hindu civilization, not the Romans. So, if you are a lunar Sabbath keeper, the obvious question for you is, if the Jews in the first century kept the lunar Sabbath and only later adopted what you would call the Roman week, why do the first century Romans keep saying the Jewish Sabbath is on their day of Saturn, or Saturday? The obvious answer to the obvious question is that the first century Jews, including Yeshua the Messiah and his disciples, kept the same recurring 7-day week as the Romans.
Oh, it's just so
obvious. It is a historical fact that the same week and day sequence exists to this day and has not changed. Yahweh has preserved his holy Sabbath. The conclusion.
He has preserved it. That's why he put it in the heavenly luminaries.
Yeah. Amen. It's the obvious conclusion really is, what does the scripture say? And oh my goodness.
Historically, lunar Sabbath keepers believed that the lunar Sabbath was observed by first century Judaism, but was lost sometime after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. But even if one rejects all the evidence to the contrary, it would seem quite impossible for every Sabbath keeper scattered all throughout the world to simultaneously drop a supposed lunar Sabbath, all without a trace of evidence to such a dramatic change. The clear
there's plenty of evidence. There's plenty of evidence. In fact, I mean, if you go to the spreading of the Gregorian calendar and how the various nations that didn't adopt it were conquered, you see that it makes total sense. In fact, the Roman Empire was separated into multiple regions, and there were several regions that did not want to adopt the calendar, and they were completely destroyed, and all of their literature was burned.
And which scripture is that says when Yah said he will make you forget, what is it?
That's in Lamentations.
Is that Lamentation? He make you forget, what is it, the festivals or Shabbat? I can't remember exact, but he said, "Oh, make you forget."
He caused the festivals and the Shabbats to be forgotten.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh, but how could we believe that he actually did what he said? Oh, 119 Ministries wants us to believe that he didn't do what he said.
And look, think about it. How long has it taken the world to adopt the Gregorian calendar? It wasn't an instantaneous process. It was long, drawn out, and systematic. It's very systematic.
In fact, 150 years ago, Russia was still on the Julian calendar.
Yep.
It wasn't even. Oh man. not even 150 years ago, had Russia adopted the Gregorian calendar. The adoption of the Gregorian calendar was so systematic and took a long time. It wasn't like overnight. Everyone was just like, oh yeah, yep.
And like Brother Greg pointed out, there's countries that still don't accept it and keep it, like China and a couple other countries. So it still hasn't been like 100% solidified.
Yeah.
Is that the Jews of the first century kept the Sabbath just as we do, on a recurring 7-day week. Scripturally, you can look from Genesis to Revelation, but you will not find a single commandment to keep the lunar Sabbath.
No, you will never find a single commandment to keep a Saturday.
Yeah. And it wasn't called a lunar Sabbath back then because it was just the Sabbath. That's how it was.
Yeah. I don't even, full disclosure, I don't even like the term lunar Sabbath, because when you say lunar Sabbath, and I think I told you brothers, all the brothers that was on the summit with me, I don't like that term lunar Sabbath, because it gives the impression that we're keeping a strictly lunar calendar and we're basing the Sabbath only off of the moon, when that's not the case. It's a Luni solar calendar in accordance with Scripture, because we are instructed in Genesis 1:14 through 16 that the sun and the moon both have a place, and the stars all have a place in regarding to the calculation of the Most High's calendar in his times, not just the moon. Just like the solar calendars are wrong, the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, they're wrong because they're based solely off the sun, and they do not accept new moon, which we already proved in Scripture is a legitimate worship day in its own category of day, right? But same thing with lunar calendars. If you only follow a strictly lunar calendar,
then your seasons are going to constantly be floating through the year.
Exactly. Exactly. So when I hear the word lunar Sabbath,
you've got to have the sun and the moon in conjunction to bring the lunar year back into alignment with the solar year.
Correct. That's why when I hear the term lunar Sabbath, I cringe a little bit. And I understand from, the brothers who are, astute scholars, and they understand what they mean when they say lunar Sabbath. But you got to understand, not everybody, has read, Dead Sea Scrolls, Book of Enoch, all of the various books supporting everything in the 66 to include Jasher Jubilees, the various books in the Apocrypha. They don't know that. So when they hear lunar Sabbath, it sounds like lunar calendar.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there is videos out there that's debunking the lunar calendar, because the lunar calendar on its own, without incorporation of the solar year, it does crumble.
Yeah.
Just as Yahweh has ensured that his inspired word was not lost in antiquity, he also protected his holy Sabbath. Adam kept it, Noah kept it, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob kept it. Joshua kept it, the righteous judges and kings kept it. The prophets of Yahweh kept it. The returning exiles who were very meticulous about the Sabbath kept it. And we know that Yeshua and his disciples kept it, proving that Yahweh preserved his Sabbath up until the 1st century CE. The same is true today.
I agree.
Yahweh
he did preserve it.
His word.
He did preserve it, and they did keep it. They kept it the way it was intended to be kept, by the moon, and not by as of that point, not even instituted Gregorian calendar.
For his name and his Sabbath for us today. We would also like to review some questions and answers about the lunar Sabbath. Number 1. Please explain Ezekiel 46, verse 1. How can the gate be opened and closed at the same time? This is grounded in the premise that there must always be 6 consecutive working days without interruption. But whether you keep the lunar Sabbath or weekly recurring Sabbath, the 6 working days will be interrupted by the feast, like the last day of unleavened bread, which falls on the 21st day of the 1st month, and Day of Atonement, which falls on the 10th day of the 7th month. The point was that the gates would be open when the people gathered for worship. The Sabbath and new moon are the regular exceptions to the gate being closed, but there are other exceptions regardless whether or not you believe in a recurring weekly Sabbath.
It didn't say what feast days. It said the Sabbath and the new moon, the gates will be closed. He's trying to go to. He's trying to go to feast days. Trying to pull out the feast days that can fall, that fall in the middle of the work week. The feast days are the exception to the rule, not the weekly Sabbath or the monthly new moon day.
Yeah, right.
It's the feast days that's the exception to the rule.
That's the exception, and he's trying to make it the other way around.
Yep.
What?
Thus, Ezekiel 46 proves nothing either way.
Whoa!
Number 2, how does the prophecy...
Go ahead, bro.
No, it proves absolutely nothing. There's nothing to be gained from reading that. Just gloss over it.
It's crazy.
In Lamentations chapter 2, verse 6 apply to the Sabbaths and feasts. They were forgotten in Sion because they were carried away into captivity.
I want to just make a quick note that Brother Greg said, hey, what's that scripture? And Professor S, being Professor S, knew exactly where it was at in Lamentations. Just want to point that out.
The very thing that Lamentations is mourning about. Number 3, why couldn't they wait for the Sabbath and new moons to be over in Amos 8:5 if we are free to buy and sell on the new moons? Amos would have been referring to the new moon of the 7th new moon of the year, which is the Feast of Trumpets. This is the only new moon in Scripture where work is expressly forbidden, so Amos would have been referring to that. Number 4, explain the offerings for the daily, the Sabbaths, and new moons in Numbers 28, verses 4 through 15. Why are there no provisions for new moon offerings that fall on the Sabbath or Sabbath offerings that fall on a new moon? There didn't need to be. One would just perform whatever offerings were required for the kind of day it was.
That didn't need to be. Conjecture.
Number 5, please explain Amos chapter 5, verses 25 through 27. Who is Sikuth and Kion? And what exactly is this astral mighty one, star god? And does it correlate to Saturday? Kion was a Babylonian idol. Didn't they keep a lunar week? In our mind, not relevant to anything. The Romans happened to call the 7th day the day of the Saturn, but the Jews always called it Shabbat. Number 6, when Yahweh commanded them to march around the walls of Jericho for 7 days, wouldn't that have been violating the Sabbath? No. The thing to remember about ancient cities in the land of Israel is that they generally covered a relatively small piece of land. Ancient Davidic Jerusalem was only about 12 acres in size and had a population of about 2,000. That increased to about 32 acres in size under Solomon's rule, with a population of about 5,000. Archaeological finds do indicate that Jericho was fairly small in size. Archaeological digs indicate that the walls of ancient Jericho enclosed an area of about 5 to 6 acres in size. John Garstein, The Walls of Jericho. In light of this, a person walking around the walls of Jericho would need to walk about 700 yards max. The traditional Sabbath day's journey mentioned in Acts 1:12 is about 1,000 to 1,200 yards. We hope that.
Hold on, pause. You can't get out of there. You can't skate out of Jericho because Jericho is the smoking gun. You talking about distance. Forget the distance. Who cares? Jericho could be 5 square feet. All right, that's fine. Let it be 5 square feet.
They were prepared for war, right? They were prepared for war. They were prepared to go in and slaughter the city. They had to have all of their stuff, all of their weapons, their loins girded.
Yep. Any provision, food, carts, everything. Right? But look, even if Jericho was 5 square feet and you could walk around it in a blink of an eye, right? You're supposed to walk around it, once per day. And then on day 7, you walk around it 7 times. You shout, the walls fall down, you go in and slaughter. It don't matter if Jericho was 5 square feet or 1,500 yards, 1,500 acres. It don't matter because the fact of the matter is, and he stated this, and he tried to prove this in his other points, trying to prove the 7th day, Saturn's day, Sabbath, by saying that the Jews didn't want to fight. So if they didn't want to fight then, why would they want to fight on the 7th day?
Yeah,
after
exactly.
The walls of Jericho fall? Stop it. Stop it.
That this teaching has blessed you. And remember, continue to test everything. Shalom.
Oh boy, yeah, test everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one simple case study. I popped in the group, and that was just the one that.
Give me that. Hold on one second. I'm gonna pull it up.
Okay, I'm saying that's just the one I was talking about. Where again, and this is always good. It's like once people, you hear the information, but when you actually test it yourself, it's like it's like all the, especially when you have specific dates in scripture, and they talk about Sabbaths. It's like, okay, now this is real. We should know when the next Sabbath is going to be, and blah blah. And it's like always lines up. So again, this is a perfect example. If you read John 7-9, this is all happening within the same time frame. Because when you read the last verse in 7, it correlates to 8 and so on. It's like I say, he left here, and then the verse 1 of 8 was like, and then he was going here. It's the same time frame. But like, for example, because even if you pull up the calendar and look at this, so it said on the last day of the feast, the 21st of the 7th month. And what feast is ends the 21st of the 7th month? That's Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles.
Tabernacles.
So again, I mean, I don't know if you want to pull up the scripture just so people can see it a little. So if you like, because these are what, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quick scriptures. So John 7.
Hold on 1 second. I gotta share my.
Oh, you got. Sorry, making you do work. extra work.
Look, it's okay. Let me do this. I'll share my whole screen so we can go back and forth between.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna pull that up real quick, and then I'm gonna get. Okay. Tabernacles.
Which is like 7:37. It was the last day of the great feast.
That's Day of Atonement. Okay, here we go. Right there. The 15th day of the 7th month shall be a feast of tabernacle for 7 days. So the 15th for 7 days. The first day shall be a Sabbath, holy convocation. And then for 7 days, you shall offer an offering. And then on the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. So let's pull it up. Going back. Let's go to Luni Solar, back to the, let's go to the 7th. All right, so the 15th is Feast of Tabernacles. The first day is a holy convocation because it is the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath as well, right? 7 days. So this is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And then on the 8th day.
And then on the 8th day, it is a Sabbath unto you. So even just using Leviticus 23, it proves it. But let's go back to...
Exactly. So and again, that's literally what you did, just prove it. Because I mean, if you want to read this, they can. But then it shows that obviously on the last day, which was the 21st, he went up, and then he came down the next day. He healed that blind person, and the Pharisees got mad because it was a Sabbath. Which you just pull up the calendar to show that. Why would the 8th and 5th? Why would those line up perfectly as Sabbaths? And it clearly says these are holy, convocation, rest days. And this is throughout. This is just one example. Again, this is throughout the first and renewed covenant. Like it lines up perfectly every time you have dates and days, or how okay. Let's see if it lines up, and it lines up perfectly. So it's like, how can you deny this calendar after?
Yeah, every time there's no discrepancies. There's no, where does that fit in? It's all right there. It's all right there.
And again,
and here's something to point out is right here where it says, what's this, John 9:14? It says, the healing of the blind man caused great anger, for it was the 7th day Sabbath. So even when you hear or read the 7th day Sabbath, that doesn't negate the fact that the Sabbath fell on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th day, because it was the 7th day of the work week.
Of the week, yes. Yes.
And it's kind of like when you look at new moon days, you got to ask yourself, why is that this is so important? Like, because, you can just remove one day. It should be fine. But like it sets the entire month, and it sets, calculating the feast days rights. And then when you look at Yah said that he will put his seal in our foreheads, showing a sign between him and us, and keeping his, the commandments as a sign between us and him. It's like I believe, this is just me speculating, but when it comes to like the real end times, we're in the end times, but it's like that mark of the beast. I really feel like it's gonna be tied to like worship, and this is gonna be some type of key that new. Again, this is just me talking. Possibly, I just feel like there's something that he's trying to show us now. The people who have eyes to see and ears to hear are willing to learn and relearn. There's like something with that new moon being set, so how to calculate certain days. Go to, you say, okay, go out on the 5th day. You hear it in your head. I don't know. You wake up, go out on the 15th of the month, and you know some of his month, or like, whatever. Go up on the 15th of the true month, or however. And if you don't know how to calculate that, oh wait, you skip new moon day, you're gonna miss that day. But it just feels like there's something there that they're trying to get us to forget because they know that
because they want to remove us from our natural cycles.
Yeah.
They want to they want to remove us from that because that's where our power actually comes from, right? As Messiah talks about us having the power, right? That comes from how we worship and when we worship, right?
And can you pull up that scripture one time, brother? The one you just had, was that Leviticus 23? Yeah, that showed Feast of Tabernacles. It just made me think of something, like, because they clearly said that.
Yeah, hold on, let me pull it up.
Okay.
Got you.
And then you showed the calendar, so it was like, I just wanted to. So okay, when it says on the 8th, so be a holy convocation unto you, and then how the 8th and the 5th, 8th and the next 7 days, and then the 15th. How would those be if you have to use new moon to get those dates, the 8th and the 15th? You have to get, you have to see that new moon's a set apart day, and it resets the month. Because if you don't, how would you get the 8th and 15th to line up perfectly for Shabbat if you don't include the new moon as a set apart day as well? That's the only way to get that to work.
Yep. Because it would have to say 7 days ye shall offer an offer made by fire unto the Most High. On the 7th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. Yep. But it's not. It's the 8th day.
So this was, people to think about that. Like, how would that line up if you didn't count new moon? See, look, 8th and 22nd. Sorry, not 8th. 15th and 22nd. And that proves that new moon is a set apart day and it's part of the calendar, and it resets every month. Because if it didn't, then it'd be like it'll word it differently. But since we know that those are set apart days.
Yep. Because after new moon begins the month, you have 7 day weeks.
Yeah. Exactly.
You have 4 consecutive 7 day weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then new moon resets the next month. And then you have 7 day weeks, 6 working days in accordance with the scripture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For 6 days thou shalt do all their work. And then the 7th day is the Sabbath unto you. Thou shalt do no servile work therein. It's right in alignment with scripture. But they're ignoring the new moon, even though the new moon is specifically has plenty of biblical evidence that shows that it is a worship day, that it is a set apart day.
Oh yeah,
it's not a commerce day. They gloss over it.
They totally glossed over that Ezekiel 46 in 30 seconds. Yeah. They were just like, don't even worry about that. It all is fine.
From the first month all the way to the 12th month, you do not see a change in the structure of the calendar. You don't see a change,
which makes total sense.
Of the calendar.
Yeah.
However,
total sense. That's why you can have a child totally understand it just by looking up in the sky.
So let's look at the Gregorian, where they're keeping a Saturday, right?
Oh, nothing.
Let's look at how it changes. Oh my goodness!
Nothing but
that.
Confusion.
That thing is all over the place.
Confusion.
And that, to me, just me personally, proves that that's a pagan calendar. Because look, you're trying to sync a holy calendar with a pagan false calendar, and it's going to jump around because you can't sync those two together. Then just going back to again that the Feast of Tabernacles, what you just went over, if you look at it from a Gregorian calendar standpoint, okay, the 8th the 15th there, then 7 days later, like the day of rest of the 22nd. How would you need to use some sophisticated calculations and software to like go back? But if you use the moon, the 15th, we know it's a full moon. So even today, thousands of years, we know what thousands of years before, we know what day it was. Again, it was the 4th month, it was a full moon, so we know it was the second week of the month. Look how easy you calculate that versus if you use a Gregorian calendar, you got to use calculations and formulas and maybe software. Okay, that was a Wednesday and then what do you still do? Oh, because we know the stars in the sky were probably here, so this is probably a Wednesday. You're still using God's calendar to try and fit it in this Gregorian system, because you still have to use the sky, constellations and stuff in eclipses or whatever to even try to figure out, that was on Wednesday or something. But when you use his calendar,
because they're still being forced to use a proleptic Gregorian calendar to go back before it was actually instituted in order to determine what day it was on that calendar system.
Yeah, and if you really get good at learning the calendar, you can look at it and then that was actually so that was, you see where the shadow is on the moon. That was actually the third work day of the week. If you get really that good, but just using the baseline of the Shabbats and new moons, you can calculate the work days. But it's just like, see how simple that is. It was a full moon. It was a half moon. It was
totally simple.
Totally simple. Versus, was that a Wednesday or Friday days?
A child can look up at the sky and tell.
It's much harder to deprogram yourself from the Gregorian than it is to learn the lunisolar.
Yeah, it's so hard.
The difficulty of
getting
the lunisolar is the whole part of just letting go and separating yourself from the Gregorian.
It's just as Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool somebody than it is to convince them that they have been fooled.
Yeah. Because even when people try to argue,
I like
they use the Gregorian calendar. Like, look, it's a Wednesday. Like, no, okay, you have to get off of this calendar to see the dates. Like, you can't use this, because they still use the calendar when they're trying to argue points, and it's like, you're still using this calendar. It's not going to work.
And interestingly enough, the word calendar is a Latin word that it involves paying taxes, right? And that's actually what the word calendar means. It means
pay the tax man every April 7th, or whatever.
The tax man, right? The tax man coming. That's actually what the word calendar means.
15th.
So we've got all of these various influences coming at us, which in the simplicity of Scripture, a calendar is not even necessary because it's all in the sky, right? We don't even really need a calendar because it's all in the sky. But the word calendar was instituted because it involved when to pay taxes, right? And even today, you clearly see that it really comes down to commerce and taxes. That's all it really comes down to. If it wasn't about commerce and taxes, there would be no necessity for the calendar. And with the Gregorian calendar, interestingly enough, I recently watched a video talking about how our taxes actually go to the Vatican as payment for using their calendar because it's their property, right?
I can believe that.
So in order to use their calendar, we have to pay them taxes. And so the majority of the taxes we pay actually goes to the Vatican for using their proprietary calendar.
And the last thing I'll say is just look at, again, you say 2 or more witnesses, right? This is like 24 or more witnesses. That clearly shows that the Yah's calendar, or wherever name you want to call it, lunisolar Yah's calendar, is clearly lines up perfect. I can see if it didn't line up. Well, okay, let's look at this, and it doesn't line up. But then, what about the 7-day continual cycle on a Gregorian calendar? Like, there's no scripture that clearly says it's an unbreakable 7-day that does not include new moon. Like the same thing that the guy was saying, that 119 Ministries showed the scripture that actually says it's unbreakable. Like the arguments he was using, you could apply it exactly to his.
Yeah, you could apply those exact same arguments the other way.
So,
which is why the deception is so pervasive, right? The deception is so pervasive because the same arguments can be used both ways. It's kind of like with the spinning ball Earth and the flat Earth, right? The arguments can go both ways depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Most of the arguments, anyways, because the calculations end up being the same, but there's clearly a truth and a falsehood.
Yeah. And so again, so even with that, because then that was one for me, because I initially, was into like science, like and alien stuff and all that. So it's like I had that NASA point of view, And that was one of the harder things for me to let go. I fought it, but then for me, as soon as I read Genesis 1, boom, it's just like you look at where the sun and moon are. For people who are listening, just read Genesis 1 and actually try to draw it out and say, okay, where the sun and moon, just look at it. Don't even look at the shape. Just right now, just look at where are the positions. Because if that shows to be false, that means everything they said. Because if they went to the moon, it looks like this. It wouldn't be here to be here. That destroys everything. If you could just get Genesis 1 and literally draw it out where the firmament, the sun and moon were set in the firmament, which is the arch in the sky. It was set there. But how does it here and there? And even in for example, the solar eclipse tomorrow, right? They say they're going to shoot missiles into the eclipse and into the eclipse. My question is, how, if it takes 3 days, if the moon is 240 million miles away, 40,000 miles away roughly, and it takes about 3 days of them going 10, 12,000 miles an hour, it takes 3 days to get to the moon. How would they shoot a rocket into the solar eclipse if it's that far away and the moon is 93 million miles away? How would they shoot it into it if they're trying to break the firmament? That's what this is about. I think they're trying to, this is our chance because of the dark energies, and so it is our most powerful day. Now we can break through the firmament. But why would they shoot into think about that. Why would they shoot a rocket into the eclipse if the moon is 3 days away at least? It's going to be a 4-minute eclipse. It just, just again, when you read it, just everything lines together and you can really yourself see, the earth actually does not look like what they say. It's like this. And then when Yahushua says he's going to come back, everybody will see him at the same time on a sphere. Like,
on a spinning ball.
It works on like a circle plane. Everything's, it's like, I don't know. That's just something off topic, but yeah.
Facts. All right, family. I know we beat the hell out of a dead horse. That horse is dead. Yeah. That thing is gone. It ain't coming back. I understand. Gone. But you got to understand the seriousness of why, right? This wasn't to pick on 119 Ministries. Like we said, they have other video content that is actually pretty informational, right? Yeah. But it's just to continuously, we're in a season of, people are really waking up to the calendar, the true calendar. And it's imperative that videos like this and other teachings that don't have any basis in facts, it's all conjecture. Like if you have to say consistently over and over and over again throughout your presentation, we should know, or we do know, or certainly, or it should be sure that, or if you're saying words, or obviously, right? If you have to lead the viewers or the readers into something that's letting you know that either one, the point that you're about to make isn't as strong as it is supposed to be, because it can't just live on its own. It needs you to build it up, right? Or two, you're giving your own opinion. You're about to provide your own opinion, because the truth, the evidence right there is it lives on its own. It doesn't need you to hype it up. It doesn't need you to big it up. It doesn't need you to convince the reader or whoever is listening that it is the truth. You just present the evidence and then you let them sort it out. Right? If you want to highlight certain parts, that's fine. But if your entire presentation is based upon conjecture, opinion, misunderstanding of context, and then you are contradicting yourself with later points to your future, there's really nothing that you can sit on that. What old boy said on Step Brothers, he said, you stand on a mountain of lies.
I have a question. Okay, now there are people that do believe in, the new moon and all that, but they think that the new moon is the full moon. What would be the argument against that? I don't believe that. I mean, after all the studies and the hours of studies and proof, it's like, I know that's not it, but I know people that do believe that.
I would direct them to the video that we did about a month ago. Maybe a month and a half ago.
New moon means to renew, right? And you can't renew from something that's already full, because instantly once it's full, it starts losing. It starts waning rather than waxing. The waxing is the renewal, right?
Facts. Also, the new moon is the 15th day of the month. In a quick little synopsis, Brother Greg mentioned it. Philo said it. Full moon.
Full moon.
The full moon is the 15th day of the month. Philo confirmed it. There you go. I mean, it goes way deeper than that. But if you want a deep breakdown, we literally just had a Shabbat talk. Give me a minute. I'll tell you exactly.
That was probably like 9 months ago now.
No, we literally just did it not too long ago.
And if I'm not mistaken, even Leviticus, well, I don't know if it's Leviticus 20 when it talks about the Passover. There is a scripture that says that, you know, it would be a full moon. That so even Passover is a full moon, not a new moon, because it's like the 14th day in the evening and 15th day is going to a full moon. But I don't remember exactly where it is, unless you guys know. But it talks about like Passover is during the full moon, which is the middle of the month.
And it makes sense. So why are you going to leave? How are you going to leave Egypt by night when there's no light? You know what I mean? You got to have that was one of the first things that stuck out to me, because when I first learned about the calendar, I went on a hike, and it ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to. It ended up going into the night, right? And I was way out in the woods. I didn't know if I had gone more than halfway or less than halfway. I didn't know if I should turn around or keep going. But the only reason I was even able to see where I was going was because it was a full moon, right? If it hadn't been a full moon, it would have been pitch black, nothing, right? I was way out in the woods. And that stuck out to me, like, you know, if you're leaving somewhere in the nighttime and you're going on a journey in the nighttime, you're going to need a full moon to even be able to see in front of you. You know what I mean? And that was something that was ingrained to me early on when I first started keeping the moon Sabbaths, right? Because I recognized, hey, you know, if you're leaving Egypt, you need a full moon. If you're camping out in the wilderness, you're going to need a full moon so that you can see what's going on. You know, just like with Feast of Tabernacles, you know, you're not going to be camping in the wilderness and not be able to see in front of your face, you know. So, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
I stand corrected. It is Shabbat Talk 65. It was about 6 months ago.
6 months ago. See, I told you, it always seems like it was just a couple weeks back.
It seems
like it was just a few weeks back, and it ended up being like 6 months ago.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And you know what's crazy is we are in week 90, bro.
Wow.
Today is episode 90. That's crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy. But all praises. So with that being said, I hope you guys by now have gotten next week's Torah portion. If not, yeah, SOL, because it's going away. Anybody got any last minute things before we close it out?
Just appreciate you brothers taking on this video and you know, going through it. It's been two Shabbat talks on it, so I just appreciate it because it'll help a lot of people.
You know, it really needed to be addressed, and I'm glad you brought it up because it needed to be addressed. You know. So yeah, thank you, Greg, for even bringing it up, because it was something that was way back in my early days of keeping the calendar, and it wouldn't really, had you not brought it up, it wouldn't have been in the forefront of my vision, you know. But it is something that does need to be addressed, you know. And I'm glad you brought it up.
All praises to Yahuwah, the Most High.
All praises indeed. All praises indeed. Well, for y'all watching, if you like the content, you want to see more, you know, video reactions like that, destroying false doctrines and such, like, share, comment, and subscribe. But with that, I thank everybody for being here. All of the people on the panel, Shabbat Shalom to y'all, my family. I love you. May the Most High bless you, keep you, camp His angels around you, and give you peace.
Shalom.
In the Messiah's name. Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat shalom, family. Love you
Shabbat
all.
shalom, family. Love you all.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Bruce. Exactly. So we can't even tell the truth now.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, we about to turn up for the Most High. Y'all ready, Israel? We on the way. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keeping them laws. On what you say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We on the way. We on the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keeping them laws.